The same thing is happening in Iraq. Ben Shapiro once tweeted, not even about Gaza, about the West Bank, when Israel continued to build the illegal settlement. He said, 2017, Israel likes to build things, and Arabs, not Palestine, not Hamas, Arabs like to bomb crap and live in open sewage.
Yeah, I thought that was very
the Israeli defense minister, he said, those are human animals. And the thing is, Ben Shapiro should know better, because, you know, long before the Holocaust, before Jewish people were thrown in the gas chamber, the Nazi propaganda called them rats. Now, as a human being, I would never accept that another human being being thrown into a gas chamber, but a rat, kill a 10, kill 1,000, 3,500. They are son of a bitch. They are human animals who live in open sewage and decapitate babies. And because of that propaganda, Mr. Morgan, that guy in Illinois, the 71 years old guy, he killed, stabbing the 6 years old Palestinian kid in Illinois 26 times. And he used to play with him. They used to be friends. But he went in, marching into their apartment, stabbing his mother and killing him, shouting, all Muslims could die.
Yeah.
It took you 80 years to change one word from Jewish to Muslim. And then you transferred your guilt to us and took away our land.
Bassem, let me ask you a question.
That guilt sucks, man.
Let me ask you a question. How do we get from where we are now to peace?
Well, first of all, you need to change the perception. Nikki Haley, the American presidential candidate, said, we are in Israel in this because it's a fight between good and evil. Now, if you already decided someone is good, he can do no evil. And if you decided someone is evil, it's good to kill them. Killing them is good. You see, the thing is, it is not like something new. I mean, I look at history and I see, I'm sorry to say this, but Westerners has always dealt like this with indigenous people. You first treated them like savages, you know, Native American, First Nation, Aboriginal. They're savages. Kill all the savages. And then when they're almost extinct, you start feeling sorry for them, you know, like animals. So maybe the solution is that we kill as many Palestinians as possible, so the few of them that remain do not bother you. And maybe Netanyahu, when he lives for another 100 years, he'll become a tree hugger.
Let me just challenge you on this.
And he will campaign for preserving the three Palestinians.
You keep talking about Westerners like me. Okay, so let me return the favor, okay? Hamas is dedicated to the complete eradication of Jewish people.
I am not the spokesman for Hamas.
I'm not saying you are.
Why do you
I'm not saying you are.
I'm not their spokesman.
You're talking to me.
I fucking hate them. Fuck Hamas. Hamas.
No,
are you happy?
You're missing my point. You're talking in a generalized way about people in the West who always talk about Arabs as savages. I don't.
No. I'm talking about America.
I actually led the campaign. I led the media campaign in this country against the Iraq War. Okay, so I don't see people in the Middle East as savages.
You are one of the good ones.
But what I would say is,
I'm not talking about you. You're great.
No, it's not about me being great. We love you. It's about the way Hamas behaved on October the 7th was like savages, like a pack of savages. It was the worst atrocity against Jewish people since the Holocaust. There has to be,
of course,
there has to be a response. So my question for you is, notwithstanding the history, Bassem.
So hell, where you want to start at with this?
Well, I guess a disclaimer. We at Nifty Rocks Media do not condone nor endorse anti-Semitism, and that is anti-Semitism as defined by basically bigotry and hatred toward the Jewish people. You might listen to this episode and think that we feel otherwise, but I have actually done lots of soul searching and listening to very heated debates about whether criticizing the nation of Israel equates to anti-Semitism. And while the nation of Israel declares that yes, it does, the rest of the world says, no, that's silly. So I wanted to reiterate, we are not Nazis. I do not hate the Jewish people. I have no ill will whatsoever to them, or for that matter, the Palestinian people. You think that sounds about good enough, Mike?
Yeah, actually, I have some quite high admiration for both sides on this, for what they've put up through in their history and stuff, and what they still accomplish in spite of that. But yeah, criticism is definitely not hate, or any kind of dislike. We might dislike your actions, folks, but that doesn't necessarily mean we have any type of feels towards yourself on that action. So make sure you keep that distinction in mind.
And with that, welcome to season 2 of Stoner's Point podcast.
And don't ask where we've been, because half the time we don't even know ourselves.
Yeah. There were some crises of multitudes of variety. And well, here we are. We were going to start back with Trump, but all this shit happened, and I ended up accidentally doing a whole bunch of research. I was like, well, shit, I'm most of the way there.
Yeah, man, it's you see the news and it's like, well, plans have changed. Somebody needs to talk about this, and other people are talking about it, but they're just talking about what's actually happening at the moment, and nobody's really talking too much about why it's happening and what other options there are, and it's trying to pick a side in this. It doesn't matter what side you try to pick, you're always on the wrong side. Depending on what room you're standing in, really. So let's have some fun with this.
Yeah. So let's see.
And what it is, Israel and Palestine. So that's the basic topic. Israel and Palestine.
Yeah. My research mostly focused on the nation of Israel and the history of Israel, and like leading into the current conflict. Palestine is Palestine. I'm gonna go into some detail about what Palestine is, but for the most part, it's just a place, like any other place with people there. So, I guess we're going to have to start with, what is Israel?
It's a make-believe place that was just, thought into existence, and, people were, well, I don't know, let's actually go through the actual history of it before we start throwing out opinions.
And, folks, with this episode, I will be posting a text document that has, or Word document, whatever, that has links for pretty much everything. There is a Wikipedia link in there, but that was mostly because all the links that are, I would have posted came from that. So, follow the links yourself on that one if you don't trust Wikipedia. Do the independent research on that. But really, the Balfour Declaration, there's not a lot of debate on what it was. So... But my first source I got here is from Biblesprout.com. And it is, what is the nation of Israel and how did it begin? The Jewish nation is a descendant of Abraham and his wife Sarah through their son Isaac. Abraham also had an older son Ishmael by Hagar. Additionally, he had 6 sons by Keturah, who he married after Sarah died. And Genesis 17, verse 5 through 6, no longer shall your name be Abram, but your name shall be Abraham, for I have made you the father of a multitude of nations. I will make you exceedingly fruitful, and I will make you into nations, and kings shall come from you. And just a little bit later at Genesis 17:20, as for Ishmael, I have heard you, behold, I have blessed him, and will make him fruitful, and multiply him greatly. He shall father 12 princes, and I will make him into a great nation. So the Arab nations, according to this weird view, are descended from Abraham and his wife's handmaid Hagar through their son Ishmael. It is sad the Jews and Arabs are half-brother nations, having the same father, but different mothers, and yet are so constantly in warfare. That is a quote from Biblesprout.com. They then go on to say that the only thing that can change this is when Jesus comes back to rule on the earth, and the Jews and Arabs acknowledge Jesus as God's son, the Messiah of the Jews and the Savior of the world. So we can just go ahead and end the podcast right here, Mike.
Yeah, God said it.
Yeah, it's been we know the problem and we got the solution right here. And wouldn't you know, it's Jesus.
Yeah, that always becomes a big problem just about in every conversation or topic that you can bring up. But yeah, wait a minute. Wasn't Abraham before Noah?
Yes. Wait. No, hold on.
I could be completely fucking stoned. I just did take a big ass dab hit. My brain could be completely rewired. I doubt it, but could be. I've been mistaken.
Nope, Abraham was after the flood. 400 years.
Oh yeah, that's right. He was descendant of Shem, not the other way around. Yeah, that was my bad.
Yeah, I knew that, but then it made me question it.
Yeah, like I said, I just took a dab hit. My brain was rewiring itself here, so yeah. That's why I questioned it. I didn't state it.
Put too much stock into what religious documents that were written by a people say about said people. It turns out most of that book's nonsense any fucking way.
Well, going again to reaffirm, I have just went through an entire month of redoing the Genesis thing. Folks, there's a lot of names and a lot of stuff that happens in that particular book, and it's hard to keep it all in order, especially when you're looking through 5 different things at the same time. It's a lot of mess in that book. Which begs a question. How do y'all people read that daggone book and get through Genesis and still want to read the rest of it?
Mike, you have to circumnavigate your intellect. You have to circumnavigate your intellect so that your thoughts can be taken over by the Christ consciousness.
Okay, so where we're at here is we got a bunch of people that were, born out here. They're pitching their tents because, they were told they're supposed to be living in tents then, not the city. So they pitched their tents in the town. You got a whole bunch of brothers and cousins and family members in this one region. They pitched their daggone tents, and they're all told they're going to be a nation of themselves. That where we're at there?
Yeah. So I haven't actually smart person article, not related to the Bible, from livescience.com. Of course, the link will be in the notes. They say the term ancient Israel is used by scholars to refer to the tribes, kingdoms, and dynasties formed by ancient Jewish people in the Levant, an area that encompasses modern day Israel, Palestine, Lebanon, Jordan, and Syria. Scholars draw mainly on 3 sources to reconstruct the history of ancient Israel: archaeological excavations, the Hebrew Bible, and texts that are not found in the Hebrew Bible. The use of the Hebrew Bible can be challenging for scholars. While some of the accounts are thought by many scholars to be mystical, such as Nebuchadnezzar II's conquest of Jerusalem, are known to have happened.
Yeah, we got to think now that at this particular point in our history, the land of Israel doesn't actually exist yet. We're calling it the land of Israel for historical reference because it's Israel now, and that's the land that Israel now occupies. But it wasn't called Israel then. The name Israel doesn't show up even in the Bible until late, almost at the very end of Genesis.
Yeah, and in the archaeological record, the earliest mention we have of the word Israel comes from a stela found in Thebes in modern-day Luxor, Egypt, and was erected by the ancient Egyptian pharaoh Merneptah, who reigned from around 1213 BC to 1203 BC. The inscription mentions a military campaign in the Levant during which Merneptah supposedly, quote, laid waste to, quote, Israel, among other kingdoms and cities in the region. That is the earliest proof we have found that a nation called Israel existed, or at least a city called Israel existed. The Hebrew Bible claims that Jewish people fled Egypt as refugees before arriving 40 years later with divine help in the Levant, where they started conquering territory from the local population, such as the Canaanites. Mike, what do you know about Canaanites?
Well, that's what I was getting ready to bring up. What I ask is, did they actually name it as the nation of Israel, or did they call it the land of Israel?
I don't believe there was a distinction really between the two.
Because that's what I think the distinction it would be, and why they call it the land of Israel in the Bible. I mean, because like I brought up a thing, an example to you in one of our earlier discussions on this about that. I live on land owned by my family. I'm not going to say the name at the moment, but I live on the family land. It's the land of that family, and we use it as a name. I'm going to use mine because I don't really give a crap about my name. Let's say it's the land of Austin. If I own land, it is the land of Austin. And, I could call it, that's my land and all. But because that land is in the state that I live in, I don't get a claim to say that that's my state. I live in the state, but it's not mine. But I do get to call the land my land. And so if they're saying the land of Israel, which I think his name was Joseph at the time, if I remember my name's right, they would call it the land of the person who owned it, because these people owned a lot of freaking land at that time. And I'm not sure when the distinction became that the land of a person. When did that land become a nation? And that is, what I was trying to figure out there, when I was looking at this. And the first mention of an actual nation of Israel that I found was when Britain made it.
Well, it had a king, right? And it had subjects, and it went to war. It was very much a state. So, in a time when like nationhood and statehood wasn't really a clear distinction, you know what I
Yeah, that
mean?
line is still blurred over there in Europe. So yeah, okay.
Yeah, yeah. But according to Life Science, the Canaanites were people. Well, just hear that out again. Were people who lived in the Canaan land of Canaan, an area which, according to ancient texts, included parts of modern-day Israel, Palestine, Lebanon, Syria, and Jordan. Most of what the Canaanite we know about the Canaanites come from records left by the people they came into contact with. Some of the most detailed surviving records come from the site of Amarna in Egypt and the Hebrew Bible. Additional information comes from excavations of archaeological sites that the Canaanites are thought to have lived in. The reason I went back up and said were people is because we can't ask the Canaanites what they were. Um, Scholars doubt that the Canaanites were ever politically united into a singular kingdom. In fact, archaeological excavations indicate that the quote Canaanites were actually made up of different ethnic groups. During the late Bronze Age, Canaan was not made up of a single ethnic group, but consisted of a population whose diversity may be hinted at by the great variety of burial customs and cultic structures.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're talking about a middle of a region where lots of other empires of the time, would have been kind of meeting, when they're trying to, the Chinese going one direction, the Europeans coming one direction, the Africans going one direction. Everybody's meeting in that for centuries before this became a land to have national or political views and trying to identify itself as individual states or whatever. It would have almost had to have been a conglomeration of different peoples from all around the area that basically just met in there.
I think the term Canaanite
and yes, this is after the whole mass exodus of the human species coming out of Africa. Yeah, I realized that they would have got there first and then spread out. But then, once civilization started forming around it, they start coming back in to do trade. That's the point that I was getting at there.
I think the word Canaanite it has similar etymology to like the history of the word barbarian. In ancient Rome, a barbarian was just basically someone who didn't speak Latin, therefore a foreigner. I think Canaanite was something along the lines of gypsy, because the earliest undisputed mention of the Canaanites comes from a letter found in Mari in modern day Syria that dates back almost 4,000 years ago. And the letter is addressed to a king of Mari and says that, quote, thieves and Canaanites are in a town called Rahisuam. The surviving portion of the letter alludes to a conflict or disorder that is taking place in the town. Later on, there's a couple hundred years after that, there is text written on the statue of Idrimi, a king who ruled a city named Alaka in modern day Turkey. One day, it says that at one point he was forced to flee to a city in Canaan, which basically it's like he was sent into exile, is what I'm getting at. So it seems like Canaanite is kind of vagrant or nomadic. It seems like that's kind of where it comes from. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's like it was a region that just happened to have a city in it. I'm not sure that it had an actual nationality or, I mean, yeah, they had, like a regional ruler. I mean, somebody's got to make rules when you got a lot of people moving into an area. But from the Bible and a couple of other writings of the area, the vast majority of that stuff was, sheep herder farmland. And, so, I mean, yeah, most of those people are going to have nomadic lifestyles. Is you can't raise a whole bunch of sheep in one area; they'll eat everything and die. You got to move to a whole nother pasture, probably halfway across the freaking country. That particular country, not one like the United States size. For the folks that are listening here, that'd be too far. But even here, you go across several states to move cattle, and sheep. They don't eat as much, but they're still going to eat. You got to move them.
So, according to the Torah and the Bible and all that, and the point in time that the people of Israel really started becoming Israelites, when they really started having their own grouping together, was after Moses, right, from Egypt. So that gives us a bit of a time frame to look at. In Egypt during this time, a bunch of text that mentions Canaan comes from the site of Amarna, which I mentioned earlier. Amarna was constructed as the capital of Egypt by the pharaoh Akhenaten. And does that name ring a bell with you, Mike?
Mike? Vaguely.
Oh, no, okay. Well, so what happened then was Egypt was polytheistic. And Akhenaten, when he became pharaoh, changed the polytheistic state religion to a monotheistic state religion. The first example I can find in history anywhere, actually, of monotheism. During this is actually during the same time that the Hebrews are supposedly in Egypt. Well, they have their one God and all that. They have Moses, all this shit going on, and when Akhenaten died, his name was erased from from the Egyptian history, pretty much. Like they call him the heretic king. In fact, the most famous pharaoh of all, Tutankhamun, his birth name was Tutankhaten because it means like the living image of the Aten, and the Aten was the monotheist god that Akhenaten, Tutankhamun's father, was bringing in.
And wasn't he the one that they had the long face that Sekaklis is trying to put toward the aliens theory?
Yes, that was him.
Yeah.
So there is a theory out there. It's kind of fringe, but there's a theory out there that when the Jews left Egypt, what actually happened was this monotheistic cult left Egypt and invaded the Sinai, where Canaan lived, because they couldn't live anymore in Egypt. That king was dead, and that culture was erased. That entire cult was erased and sent out into the land of Canaan, or exile.
Yeah, that would be an explanation. I'd buy that before I bought the one that was written.
Yeah, and like the where Amarna is, the crossing over the Red Sea would have been much simpler than where the Bible says it happened at. Yeah, so it actually really lines up, that Akhenaten was Moses, or like one of Akhenaten's priests were Moses, and actually founded this religion out of this cult of people that were being brought out of Egypt because they could no longer live there. Probably because they killed all the firstborn children. But
I mean, well, that, Akhenaten or one of his priests being Moses would actually hold more water than the story of Moses is written, because there's no evidence of an actual Moses. There's nothing else written about it, that particular name or person doing anything along those lines anywhere else to collaborate it. But just somebody giving a name to something they couldn't pronounce or translate, yeah, I could buy that.
and so what basically happens from this point forward, once either the Jews that were being held in bondage or the Akhenaten cult, whatever the case may be.
Well, if
What
that
basically
particular
happened,
group of Jews that went into Egypt were held in bondage as slaves, then that particular group of them deserved it, because that
according
particular group of them were the ones that sold their brother into slavery to Egypt. So yeah.
that is the only thing of that comes from the Bible. Now there is Joseph in Egyptian history, and he came from another land and whatnot, but he was just one of them. He like if the Bible's to believe, Joseph sold the Israelites into Egyptian slavery. I think Joseph was just somebody who rose to power in Egypt. I don't think they took that as part of his mythology. Like he was one of the heroes, the martyrs of the past, kind of, because he was monotheistic, right? He supposedly believed in the one God that Moses later believed in. But there's actually no evidence that he did. In fact, his burial site has been found, and it's very much in tune with what an Egyptian would believe about the afterlife. In fact, he was everything about he took on Egyptian things. So I don't actually think that Joseph was ever really an Israelite Jew, like from the Torah believing, because there
Yeah,
was no such thing at this point.
like I said, there's a lot of names, because this is the patriarchal part of the scriptures. So the names, and some of them are completely unpronounceable, and and I'm horrible with names to begin with. But Joseph, isn't he the father of the kids, or was Joseph the actual kid that got sold? I can't remember which name was which.
So, so Joseph was the kid who got sold. He
Okay.
was the favorite of his parents, and the brothers got jealous of him, supposedly. This is according to the Bible, and sold him to slaves, and he ended up in Egypt.
His father
And
was
then
Jacob.
I think so, yeah. And then what happened after that was when Egypt was going into famine, Joseph brought in his brothers and whatnot to help work the fields, and apparently, supposedly, Egypt never let them go.
No, no, no,
You
no, no.
know,
The other way around. The land of Canaan was in famine. Egypt was doing great. Joseph,
yeah, yeah,
after being sold into slavery, his brothers threw him in a fucking pit, into a cistern, and left him there. Some Mennonites came by, got him out of the pit, sold him into slavery, or the brothers sold him to the Mennonites to sell him into slavery, depending on how you interpret that. It's not actually written. But either way, Joseph gets sold into slavery either by his brothers or through his brothers, because they're jealous because he got more attention. And so, yeah, there's that whole thing. So Joseph gets into Egypt, is, apparently smarter than everybody else for some reason. Apparently God's on his side, and, he can do math. And the whole nation of Egypt, that's been running just fine, couldn't do it before, and is now doing better because some kid goes in there and starts running things. So he is now, pretty much as powerful as the Pharaoh himself. He has the favor of the Pharaoh, even though the Pharaoh can't sit down and have a meal with him. He's the favorite of the Pharaoh. He runs every fucking thing. His brothers come to Egypt looking for help because the Canaan is in famine and everybody's starving up there. They don't recognize their brother. So they send him, they get some food and all that stuff, and the brother Joseph sends him off with some silver, to try to set him up because, hey, look, motherfucker, you did me wrong. Watch this. I'm gonna mess with you because remember my dream when I said I'd have you all kneeling before me. Watch, this is my chance. They go back with the food and all that, find that there's silver in their bag that they didn't have before. So their father sends them back. So when they get back, say, hey, we brought your silver back. Jacob says, hey, all right, you say you got a younger brother, go get him, bring him back to me. I think you're lying to him. And not only that, bring everybody. So they go back to go get their family, and the father's all pissed off. We can't do that. I'm not sending my youngest son. I've already lost one to whatever, because the brothers lied and said that their little brother got killed when they knew damn well.
By a lion. Yeah.
Yeah, I've already lost my one. I'm not losing my youngest now.
They even went to the trouble of tearing up his coat and putting blood on it.
Yeah, if only they had laboratories back then. But yeah, they come back with the younger brother, and they still don't recognize that this guy's their brother, and so he says, "All right, my father's still alive." He starts treating his younger brother all great, feeding him more than he does the rest of the family, giving him better clothing, just treating him like a king here, because that's what turned their jealousy. He's trying to find out if these people have changed, or trying to teach them a lesson in his own way. Who knows? Depends on the interpretation, of course. But he sends them back in there, says, hey, go get your family and all that. You're starving over there. It'd be a lot easier if you just come here. I can take care of you, blah, 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 all that good shit. Just bring them all here. And then tells them, hey, I'm your brother. They had this whole family reunion. You can't recognize my face, but they brought him in close. Now, one of those things is, hey, to recognize me, here's my circumcision. Now you know me. But that's one of the commentaries about that. You couldn't recognize my face. How about my penis? Just went through that, and then and yes, I've taken that joke from the Bible study that I read to get that.
You know what makes your penis super recognizable? When you hack part of it off.
Right? I mean, we use the same tool. We got the same little mark here. So it's feasible. But then, like I said, he sends for his whole family, and his whole family comes. His father and their fucking their servants and their servants' wives and husbands, and everybody, the entire fucking pack. Basically the entire city of these peoples came to Egypt at behest of their own family. They weren't taken there forcefully. Now, I haven't got to the exact, parts of what happened next. That's where I'm at in that study right now. But they weren't put there forcefully. Even if they are slaves afterwards, they weren't put there forcefully, and they were done dirty by their own kind. Ain't nobody else do it to them. They did it to themselves.
Yeah. There, yeah, and like I said, there's debate as to whether they were ever even in Egypt, but their monotheism definitely smacks of a lot, and Moses's laws and all that definitely smacks a lot of ancient Egypt.
Oh, they were in Egypt. It's why and how long is up for debate, but the fact that a group of these folks, the Hebrews at the time, the Jews, whatever the names changed, but this family, let's call them the Israelites because, that's what they turned into and what they are now known as. Let's call them the Israelites. They did go into Egypt, for how long is debatable and how they left is debatable. But there's writings on both sides to collaborate that they did get there and did leave. The number is absolutely debatable. There were no millions of slaves there. That didn't happen.
No, Egypt would have collapsed, and so would have the Sinai Peninsula. But either way, this group leaves Egypt and ends up over in the Sinai Peninsula, where in the land of Canaan. Now, Canaan's religious structure, they were loose. Like I said, there were loose collections of tribes here and there. So they're like the Celts or the Norse in when it comes to their religion, as in they had like some centralized gods, but each area did it differently. You know, there was Baal and Moloch and
Is that
Marduk.
Hellenistic?
Huh?
Is that Hellenistic or no? There's one of those where you got a pantheon of gods, but there's only one, leader of the gods, kind of a thing.
That is there's that happens a lot, but there in Canaan there really wasn't one because of how kind of broken things up were. They just have multitudes of gods. One particular cult from the southern part, down by where Yemen is now, um, they kind of were isolated group that worshipped exclusively Yahweh, who was kind of a metallurgical storm god in the Canaanite culture. Well, this Yahweh somehow got married to this group of Egyptians at Mount Sinai with these 10 Commandments and all this shit. That's where it gets tied into Yahweh and Jehovah and the current God and whatnot they have now. He wasn't the God of them always. He was the God of some random Canaanite sect that, religion does what it does when it's trying to infect other people, and it blends in. It hides itself among current already, well established ideas.
No, it's just that particular house's god, because everybody had a god of their house at that time. Even if you were in a larger religion that had a monotheistic style, you still had gods of your house, but the god of the land was the god.
Right, and in most of these cases, that's exactly what the thing is. But archaeologists are finding that the Yahweh cult that existed in Yemen was it was unique in the fact that all the other gods were in fact evil. Um, where the rest of it was just general polytheism. There was multiple gods, and you worship the god of your household or your tribe or whatever. The Yahweh cult was rather unique so far in what they found.
But that was the god
Um,
of their house, and it just so happens that the god of their house gained a lot of popularity.
well, it gained popularity and but to the like I said, it was a unique thing that the other gods were now rejected as being evil and false. That is unique in Canaanite culture to the Yahweh cult. At least so far. Again, there's not a lot of Canaanites to ask these questions to because um, one particular group decided that their God said that they should kill the other ones. Um, yeah, and God tells Moses, quote, I have heard them, the Israelites, crying out because of their slave drivers, and I am concerned about their suffering. So I've come down to rescue them from the hand of the Egyptians and to bring them up out of that land into a good and spacious land, a land flowing with milk and honey, the home of the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites. The stories then told in the Hebrew Bible say that after the Israelites escaped Egypt, they fought a series of wars against the Canaanites and the other aforementioned groups, which led to the Israelites taking over the majority of the Canaanites' land. The stories also say that those Canaanites who survived were forced into doing labor. The stories say this conquered land was incorporated into a powerful Israelite kingdom that eventually split in two.
Now you got to think all these other folks that they're fighting. Those were their cousins and their brothers and their sisters' families and their fucking former freaking handmaidens' families, and because these are the same freaking tribe people that were born from the same God, and they're given a different tent. And you will be the tribe of this, of this skill and of that skill. That whole multiple deity thing. It's actually written about in the Bible. God actually sends this son out to be this nation of that skill. It's there. These are all the same family, so they're going back in there to take the land back from their cousins that they voluntarily walked away from just 100 years earlier.
Yeah, and archaeologists have noted that evidence for though after that, like according to the Hebrew Bible, man named David rose to become Israel's king after slaying a giant named Goliath, and there was actually a lot of fuckery that went on there. But after his death, which is estimated to be around 3,000 years ago, his son Solomon took over and reconstructed what is now called the First Temple. The temple was located in Jerusalem and contained the Ark. Um, Recent archaeological excavations show that similar smaller temples existed in all over the area at the time, so no one really knows which one was that. Furthermore, pretty much all of what we know about King David comes from the Hebrew Bible. There has been one inscription found at an archaeological site of Tel Dan in Israel, named that mentions a house of David. The meaning of the words is debated by scholars. Some people really think it's evidence for a ruler named David. But other than that, in the Bible, archaeologists note that evidence for King David's supposedly vast kingdom is scarce. Jerusalem appears to have been sparsely populated around that time. Over centuries of archaeological explorations in Jerusalem, we haven't found shit. We found there's any evidence for any type of fucking building activity in that time. Basically, the whole concept that there was a land of Israel that was, ruled over by David and they built their temple there, it seems to be an exaggeration to say the least.
Or a retelling of a different tale that came from somewhere in a completely different region, like most of those fables are.
Or maybe it was, a particular type of group that we've talked about before that always has to harken back to some golden era of the past.
Yep, could be.
It seems to be a through line. Why is fascism default?
Well, I mean, that whole book is, except for a few, passages that actually do denote, historical events as they happened in places that did exist. There's a couple of those. But most of the stories that are there are just absolute retellings. I ain't going to say that it's plagiarism because, I mean, just telling a story doesn't copy it. I mean, when you change names, places, you can make it your own. And when you're retelling a myth, if I'm, to tell them a story of Hercules, I'm not plagiarizing it. I'm just retelling. And it's up to somebody else, a couple hundred years later, what they made of it. I would have to go that, these people just took a story from somewhere else and said, hey, we're going to change the name and places and make it refer to us to give our past some kind of meaning. And I don't think it was an actual, hey, this happened, account of actual history. Because we don't have the records to show that there was a record keeper, somebody keeping the minutes of the people. We don't have any of that to show that this is actually what the people did. What we have is a bunch of stories saying this is what happened 500 years before, 2,000 years before, a millennia before the times were actually written about. And you can find stories in other texts, some of them even religious texts, that say the same thing, just different names, different places, but the events are the exact same order.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I kind of lean towards anything that the Bible said is fake until I'm shown proof otherwise. And there's a lot of archaeologists that are called biblical archaeologists that I kind of discredit on general principle. But sometimes they do find shit that leans some credence towards the Bible being accurate about this particular thing or this particular thing. And you're going to have that. You're going to have any story written about a current time is going to contain some current events. I mean, even look at the Marvel movies. You know what I'm saying? You can find definite ties between like 9/11 and shit like that with the Avengers movies. So yeah, it reflect these things. Like some of these things happened, And the story, the archaeology might say one thing and the story say another, but always go with the archaeology when available. But looking through the stories can give you kind of an idea of some of the things that the people were dealing with. The stories might not be true, but the way they lived and whatnot, that shit's real. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for example, on what we were just talking about, Egypt and the Jews getting into Egypt. Egypt did exist. There was a massive famine back in those days, and people were migrating into Egypt from all around. That famine did happen. There's small fragments of notes in the Egyptian history to correlate that. And so did that particular group of Jews come in that way as the Bible wrote? I don't know. It could just be they inserted that, historical part. And this famine is how we got in there. And then they wrote the story to go, or that could have actually happened verbatim the way that happened. They sold their their brother into slavery, and he brought his family and all their fucking belongings into Egypt to give some kind of retribution, or to, hey, I'm in a good place, I can help you one way or the other. It doesn't matter. That could have happened, or it could have been a complete fabricated story around a historical event. We don't know. There's no collaboration for the actual movement. There's collaboration for the event, not the story.
Now, the Bible goes further on down the line. All the stuff, all this Bible stuff happens, and the Bible later states that the rule of Israel's king Pekah, who reigned around 735 BCE, launched a military campaign that conquered several cities from Israel. The Assyrian king launched a military campaign that conquered several cities from Israel. The Pekah was assassinated, and Israel's losses mounted, and a new king named Hoshea took control over what was left of Israel. Accounts then suggest that the Assyrian campaign against Israel was actually just part of a larger war in which Israel and Judah, which is the split off from Israel. When I said earlier that it split into two different nations, it became Israel and Judah. The Assyrians sided with Judah, while a kingdom named Aram sided with Israel. So basically, the kingdom of Israel came to an end when Hoshea was forced to pay tribute to the Assyrians in 723. Well, the exact date's not clear, but they're estimated around 723 BCE. The kingdom of Israel came to an end, and its remaining territory was incorporated into the Assyrian Empire. Most Israelites were deported to Assyria. The Bible says that Judah was the last Jewish kingdom standing, although it was now forced to pay tribute to Assyria.
And well, that should have been the end of it.
That should have been the fucking end of it.
And if we're at 700 BCE, we're getting pretty close to the wars that created the Ottoman Empire.
Yeah. I mean, there's a whole lot of history of what happened to the Assyrian Empire, but basically, the moral of the story is at this point that the nation of Israel no longer exists in the same way that the nation of the Oglala Sioux or the Kickapoo or the Seminole don't exist anymore. You know what I'm saying? The people might be around. There might be some of the people, but their nationhood is gone. Has been taken over by the Assyrians. They've paid tribute. They gave up.
So, let that sink in for a minute. Usually when a nation or a country or a kingdom or whatever, fiefdom, whatever you want to call it at the time, usually when one, more powerful, entity comes and takes it over, it's gone.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, you can, look all over the rest of the world for that particular example, especially when you look at the rules of colonization. I mean, you don't say we don't have Native American empires and nations over here in America. No, it's all the United States of America. We took it all. Britain, you know, those islands used to be different little tiny, states and, nations of themselves. It ain't no more.
Exactly. And like I said, I don't. Do I think that warfare is a good thing? No, but I do believe that it's pretty much what builds nations, right? It's what makes a nation a nation. It is fucking warfare, and anything else is kind of underhanded and shitty, right? I mean, war is bad enough. You know what I'm saying?
Oh
But when
no,
it's
no, I got to define that a little bit more. No, that's not what makes a nation a nation. What makes a nation is just our definition of this is my yard. That's pretty much all that is. This is my yard. These are my resources. Anybody comes over here, I'm gonna kill them. That's what creates a nation when you give it a name. There, we're animals. Anybody thinks we're more than animals is deluding themselves. Just because we have the ability to reason doesn't take us out of the animal kingdom. That just makes us better at killing each other for resources than any other animal on the fucking planet. Therefore, kingdoms really doesn't matter. It's just a name we give our yard. We're fighting for bigger yards, and we group together because we're social animals, and try to group together under somebody that's got the power to get our ideas the same. That's what we're going to do. And there's no way around that until we all get the same ideas.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel you. But basically, what it boils down to is after this point, like, yeah, they come. This particular patch of dirt remains contested. Well, till today actually, but it's been fought over and taken over and invaded and argued over and slaughtered over. There was the multiple crusades and there's been a diverse history of people that want this place.
Like I said before, it's been fought over since the second person put their tent down.
Right. And so, and the Jewish people, they got scattered to the wind, right? They maintained their culture for the most part, like their histories and their religion, but they always had this set identity of separateness. Their holy book, in fact, says that they are separate. That's the purpose of circumcision originally. It was, a way to keep, yourself as separate from everybody else, as marked by God's covenant. And that's kind of a weird concept in itself, right? Like you meet somebody like, oh, hey, nice to meet you. Show me your dick. Like what? It's such a weird thing, but yeah, that's they're everything about the Jewish laws and everything are to remain that they are a separate and set aside people.
Very, very separate.
Yeah, go ahead.
Separate to the point that the only relationship that is contested in the first book of the Bible is a non-incestuous relationship. Somebody married outside of their family. That was the relationship that was, no, you can't have that. Every other relationship was, cousins or sister wives or, possibly even, parent to child, those relationships, those are all good, sought after, ordained even in some cases. But there's one relationship to where the guy went out of the daggone family and was like, no, everybody raised hell about that one. So they are very, very separate.
Yeah, their God really cares about where you come. Like he just sits in a bush all day watching people come. Like, okay, that's all right. All right, that's cool. Face to face, man to woman. All right. Oh, nope. Unholy. Wrong. She is receiving pleasure. Yeah, it's such a weird.
Oh, you can take that one all the way back to the Garden of Eden with Adam and Eve, man. Sitting there not even knowing right from wrong, all naked and stuff, didn't even know they were doing wrong. And God knows right from wrong, but, he made them naked and didn't let them know that it was wrong. What is his own personal Pornhub? I mean, they ate from the tree of knowledge, and the first thing they realized was, oh shit, we're naked. This is wrong. Wait a minute. If this was wrong and God knew it, wait, eat.
It seems more likely they're like, man, it's getting cold this time of year, and we're naked.
I'd be more like the guy who's got a damn bramble in the wrong place, and that thorn hurt. I need a leaf here.
At the very least. So yeah, and this particular identity, the way that Jews identify themselves as separate than other people, it leads to a lot of like worldwide mistrust of them. They're kind of everybody's fucking whipping boy. They're the scapegoat of history, and that's been said by lots of scholars.
I could actually see that, and even looking at it in today's day and age, it's old school bullying. If you had some group of kids coming into a new area and thinking that they're all this and that, and they're better than everybody else, or any kind of privilege whatsoever, the rest of the population is going to quickly put them in their place.
Yeah, and it's.
I mean, I could just see that, man. You come through, yeah, my God says I'm all special and powerful. We're the chosen people. And then everybody else in the region's just going to be like, oh, yeah, where's your God now? While they're kicking them in the mud.
Yeah, well, a common thread of humans seem to be, xenophobia. And if you got this group that is like, putting themselves out there as, I'm not trying to like victim blame or whatever, but
no, not at all.
Themselves out there as separate or whatnot. They're putting themselves on a pedestal. I mean, the naturally xenophobic people around them are going to do what xenophobes do. Xenophobes got a xenophobe.
Yeah, it was one of the things my mom taught me a long time ago. About the way I wanted to dress. I wanted to do something stupid when I was a kid, and Mom looked at me like, "Yeah, that's stupid." But she told me, "You're the one that's got to deal with it. You do what you want to with it, but you got to deal with the consequences." And boy, when I went out there dressed like that, I dealt with the damn consequences. I didn't dress like that no more. So, I mean, that's the way people operate. You do something that's out of the norm of the tribe's going to look at you funny.
So out of all this, there starts this new kind of a thought process among the Jewish community, especially in the Russian Jewish community. They've been dealing with pogroms and whatnot. Things are kind of rough. So, sorry, 1 second. Okay, yeah. So they start to have this movement that called Zionism, right? Which actually immediately got appropriated by these anti-Semitic Russian propagandists and tied it to this fictional book they had made up to demonize Jews called Protocols of the Elders of Zion. But I do not want it to be confused that the Protocols of the Elders of Zion is in fact a false forgery. It's not real. There's no secret cabal of Jews trying to run the world. There may be a secret cabal of people that are trying to run the world,
and there may be a Jew.
Some of them may be Jews. I do not know, but that is not saying that a cabal of secret Jews are running the world. No.
No, if they could run the world, they're doing a horrible job at it.
Yeah, and that's basically what the Protocols of the Elders of Zion says. And and that's where a lot of the European anti-Semitism we saw during during the Russian Revolution and then the Second World War, a lot of that comes from the Protocols of the Elders of Zion. Even modern anti-Semitism is mostly based on ideas that come from Protocols of the Elders of Zion. It included propaganda that Jews ate babies and all kinds of crazy shit. It started the blood libel and all this. Man, it's an ugly history, but Zionism is not actually affiliated with the Protocols of the Elders of Zion. Zionism is a nationalist movement that had its goal as the creation and support of a Jewish national state, a homeland of Jews, a place where Jews could be somewhere safe, could rule their own, be masters of their own destiny, and be left alone to, somewhere the Jews could finally call home. Because, every religious, political, and ethnic group have their own homeland, Mike.
Yeah, if not, they deserve it, right?
Everybody. Everybody gets a homeland. You get a homeland, and you get a homeland. Not you, terrorists.
Oh, so that's the solution. They need to go on to Oprah.
Oh, God damn it. You get a state, and you get a state.
Get Netanyahu on to Oprah and the situation to be solved. Oh, man. No, we'll digress. No, I mean, shit. What was it? Yeah, I mean, they deserve to be them people. They deserve to have their thoughts, and however it is. Now, of course, other people have their rights to have their thoughts, and they can conflict. People have a right not to like the way that another group thinks and acts and behaves. Does the other group have a right to think, act, and behave like that? Absolutely. As long as it's not interfering with anybody else's right to do the same bullshit and think them way and act the way they want to, nobody should care. Unfortunately, people cared to the point where it's become a problem. And, anti-Semitism is a fucking problem. As much as any other racism is. I don't know why it's treated special. It should just be lumped into racism, but just to clarify on that. They got a right to think that they're special and different from everybody else, but everybody else has a right to think they're nuts for it.
Exactly. Like, you can believe whatever the fuck you want to believe until you're affecting my choices,
And, well, they definitely start affecting everybody else's choices. We'll get to that because, they're definitely affecting everybody else's choices.
So basically, there was around this, so they start gaining a little bit of popularity, the Zionists. There was a Austrian journalist named Theodor Herzl, who's basically called the father of modern Zionism, who regarded assimilation, like, Jews just live like normal people, just be a Jew, but be where you are, you're just a person. He said that would be the most desirable solution, but in view of anti-Semitism, is it impossible? That it is impossible to be a Jew because everybody hates Jews. He argued if Jews were forced by external pressure to form a nation, they could lead a normal existence only through concentration in one territory. In 1897, he convened the first Zionist Congress at Basel, Switzerland, which drew up the Basel program of the movement, stating that Zionism strived to create for the Jewish people a home in Palestine secured by public law. The center of the movement was established in Vienna. The Zionist Congresses met yearly until 1901 and then every 2 years. When the Ottoman government refused Herzl's request for Palestinian autonomy, he found support in Great Britain. In 1903, the British government offered 6,000 square miles of Uganda for settlement, but the Zionists held out for Palestine. Uganda, because it's empty. There's no one there.
Yeah, that would have been if you're looking for a home for your people to migrate to, probably would be better to choose one that doesn't have somebody else already calling it home.
Well, I mean, the Ugandans, but I don't think they were. I don't think it would have been as bad. They still would have been doing the same thing that eventually happened. Spoilers, but it would have been a different place. It would have been different people, and so interspersed. Like, it wouldn't have even been that foreign because the Ethiopians hold on to Judaism. In fact, I believe they're the oldest like intact version of what Christianity started out. They actually maintain these traditions. So I don't think it would have been as big a deal, if they had moved into Uganda, as it ended up being where they ended up going, because Zionists were just dead set on Palestine, dead set on it. Like, they
Well,
got to
because
have
their
it.
book said that was the land that was given to their nation father.
Their book also said that they would return to it only after the Messiah had come, and they don't recognize either Jesus or Muhammad as the Messiah. So they're still waiting on the Messiah to come. There is a lot of Jews who say that the Zionist movement is actually anti-Jewish, because it goes against God's will. They say that the Jews are to be in exile because they violated God's commandments or whatever, and that God will bring them back to Israel when He is ready, not by some farcical aquatic ceremony.
All right, let's pause there for a second. Yeah, I'm backing on it. Yeah. So we were where? Oh yeah, right before, about the time of the World War I, right before the Brits came into the picture, wasn't we?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that part of it there is pretty muddy before the Ottomans actually took it all over. I don't remember. I haven't found the history of that particular part of it yet. How much nation changing was, the border changing was in that particular time.
Yeah. So Herzl ended up dying. All this is still like a fairly popular fringe movement, political movement mostly, but it's a theocratic political movement. You know how I feel about theocracies.
Yeah.
The failure of the Russian Revolution in 1905, motherfucker. Hold on. Yeah, and the wave of pogroms and repressions that followed caused growing numbers of Russian Jewish youth to immigrate to Palestine as pioneer settlers. So they haven't actually been given permission, but they're just going to settle. And these settlers, these Zionist settlers, they come back. They come back to the story later on. But by 1914, there were about 90,000 Jews in Palestine. 13,000 settlers lived in 43 Jewish agricultural settlements, many of them supported by a French Jewish philanthropist. So World War I happens. Bummer. Political Zionism reasserted itself, and its leadership passed to Russian Jews that lived in England. Which leads us to the Balfour Declaration.
Well, a little bit before that, mate. You got to think, during this little Zionist thing that was going on, Britain had its homeland islands, and it had its jewel of the East, the India, its main little territory over there, and they had to travel through this other area here, the Middle East, that was always hotly contested. And then the Ottomans, they had that area, pretty much locked under control for a long time, and the Brits then had to go through the Ottoman territories, and they didn't like having to do that. So they started colonizing, all these other areas right up next to, and in some cases taking parts of the Ottoman Empire, so that they could have better travel and more, places to stop in between the islands and India, even to the point of, creating the Suez Canal against Egypt's better wishes, and, pretty much forcing Egypt to become a territory, and which kind of got the Ottomans all kinds of pissed off, and was one of the reasons that they decided to join World War One, to create this catastrophe here.
Well, I guess I should have mentioned the colonization. But yeah,
Yeah, there was a lot of colonization that was going on at that time to get that region primed for change.
Yeah, and the British Empire is a wonderful example
Only when I'm pressing the button.
of colonism working. Right? Oh, wait, that's right.
I see what you did there.
You see what I did there? So, sorry, I was snacking on some crackers there. Now they're all stuck in my mouth. That's better. All right. So, yeah, they're basically, they're trying to get the Balfour Declaration, which promises British support for the creation of a Jewish home in Palestine. It was included in Britain's League of Nations mandate over Palestine in 1922.
Well, before then, man, during the 1918 to 36, while that area was in British rule, there were talks about just letting the Arabs retain control of it of that region. But there was some agreement, Peel something. My memory's fogging out, and my notes are shit. But they were already into this agreement with the French about creating a two-state solution there. And one of this is not confirmed. This is one of the thoughts that it could have been because these two particular areas were inundated with the influx of Jews, and they wanted a place to put them. But that could have been a particular thought of the source material here. That they made a point of it that there was apparently some strife in the areas in France and in Britain for the amount of Jews that were in the area there. But it was in 47 was when the League of Nations and the UN decided that, yeah, we're doing a two-state solution here.
Right. I mean, I have my own ideals about the whole two-state solution thing, but yeah, they during that time they really didn't know what they wanted to do with it. Right? They had no idea really what to do with this plot of land. There was a whole bunch of different things that were going on. Russians were in the midst of the Bolshevik Revolution. There was a stalemate in southern Palestine broken by the Battle of Beersheba in 1917. There was a lot going on at this time. And like the Balfour Declaration actually even said that the local populations, well, let's get to the text of the Balfour Declaration. His Majesty's government view with favor the establishment in Palestine a national home for the Jewish people, and will use their best endeavors to facilitate the achievement of this object, it being clearly understood that nothing shall be done which may prejudice the civil and religious rights of existing non-Jewish communities in Palestine, or the rights and political status enjoyed by Jews in any other country. So it actually it shouldn't have been what it ended up becoming. You know what I'm saying? Like it seemed in the initial state like, okay, you can have this area and you're going to live nicely now. You two are going to share and you're going to be nice to each other. Right? That seems like does that track for you, Mike? Does that sound about right?
Well, yeah. Well, before Britain had control of all this land, like I said, the Zionists were offered and rejected an offer of land. After Britain was given all this land to control, that used to be the Ottomans, a whole bunch of Arabs over here now. Now they had all this other land to give them, and it just happened to be the Sinai Peninsula, the Levant, and all this homeland stuff. So hey, we got an idea. Let's just break it off. And honestly, the first one, was heavily weighted toward the Arab nation over there, because there was only like a 2% freaking population of Jews in that area at the time. Most of the land was to be given to the Arabs, and a little bit of the land was to be given to create the Jewish state, and a small portion to be maintained by Britain. And the Arabs said, "Hell no! This is our land. We don't want no part of this shit." And that was the first of a few offers of this shit, and where most of this current conflict gets its start.
Yeah. In what was it, 1922? Yeah, between 1919 and 1922, the British are working on this. They're establishing mandates over former territories of the Ottoman Empire. And their mandate is to, quote, provide administrative advice and assistance by a mandatory until such time as they are able to stand alone. We do that all the time, apparently.
Yeah, that was supposed to be the original agreement, was where the Brits are just going to retain control until these people can get along, and there was going to be a one-state finalization before the Brits pulled out. But that's where I was talking about with that Peel agreement in 36, where somebody in the background with French said, "Yeah, nah, that's not what we're going to do. We're going to do the two-state idea for anyway."
Right. I mean, let's just draw lines in the sand. They're all brown people anyway. What do we care, right? That sounds about like the British Empire. Oh, they're all brown. Famous humanitarians, the British Empire.
Oh yeah, man, they do great
Everywhere they
works.
drew a line, yeah, done great. Good things, good, cool, and good.
It works so well that they still do it today.
So yeah, the Balfour Declaration, the Palestinian Mandate required Britain to put into effect the Balfour Declaration's national home for Jewish people, alongside the Palestinian Arabs, who they were the 98%. This requirement and others, however, would not apply to the separate Arab emirate to be established in Transjordan. The British controlled Palestine for almost 3 decades, overseeing a shit ton of protests, riots, and revolts between Jewish and Palestinian Arab communities. During the Mandate, the area saw two nationalist movements rise: the Zionists and the Palestinian Arabs. Which leads us to the 1936 Arab Revolt in Palestine, and then the 1944-48 Jewish insurgency in Mandatory Palestine. The United Nations Partition Plan for Palestine was passed on 29th November 1947. I tried to look up the Palestinian Partition Plan for Palestine, and it seems not to be around.
There was none.
Oh, maybe nobody asked,
Oh no. The Arab nation, their group, I fucking forgot what it called. I should have wrote that down, but they formed their own little United Nation of Arabs kind of a thing. I can't remember what the fucking name was.
United Arab Emirates.
No, that wasn't it at that time. But shit, I will have to go look it up and put it into our notes later. But the 47 League of Nations UN charter for the two-state solution that was rejected, and the Arabs come to their own agreement that there would be no negotiations, there would be no state of Israel, and they completely rejected the idea of a two-state solution in 47, and again in 67, and again in 2000, and again in 08. They will not accept a two-state solution.
Well, I mean, what are some reasons that you could blame them for that?
Not a single one.
I mean, exactly. You wouldn't look at America's reaction to the southern border, to our southern border. And and if we just had to accept Mexico, I mean, Texas was actually just Mexico now. In fact, no, we have to accept that Arkansas is now Texas now. That's silly. We're not going to do that. We're going to fight that shit. We're going to be mad about it. We're not going to fucking negotiate the terms.
If Great
Nobody.
Britain walked over here to the United States and said, hey, we're going to take everything west of the Mississippi and we're giving it back to the natives. And everything Texarkana, all that stuff is back to Mexico. All you Americans, you're going over here on the East Coast, and that's all the land you get to live for these 300 million people. You think we're going to take that? No. You think we're going to accept it 100 years from now? No. As far as I can tell, this conflict is still ongoing from 1918, where the Brits mandated that this land is taken from the Arabs and given to the Jews.
Yep, fucking white people, man. Fucking Brits.
Now, it depends on what side of the fence you stand on that. Did the British authority have the authority over all these lives at that time, and we have to go by that as international law? And, okay, I can get on the fence on that and argue that if I needed to. I don't personally hold that view, but it is the way of the world. Like I live in a country that shit happened, and I would not stand for somebody stepping over here and saying this land goes back to the Native Americans. I wouldn't do it, even though I do have Native American blood in me, and part of my blood says it should happen. I wouldn't stand for it. It's just not the way the world worked at the time, and it's not the way the world works now, at least not yet. You just don't get to say that the land goes to somebody because you have the power to say so, unless you do it completely by force and eradicate everybody else, and there's nobody else to say anything about it, then the land's yours. I mean, it's the way power has come from the dawn of man. So yeah, there is a stance to say that Britain had the authority and they owned the land at the time, and they created a state, so we have to deal with that and we have to get along with the new borders. But there's also the other side. I mean, I feel for the Native Americans over here that got all their land taken away from them, and they're living on reservations, and they have hardly no identity. I feel for that. Do I want to give the land back? No. So I'm on the fence about it. Yeah, honestly, but I can see it from the Palestinians and the Arabs' perspective. That was their land. They took it long before history was written. It's theirs, and then somebody just comes in, and because they drew lines in sand and said it's somebody else's now, they got to live with it, and it hasn't been peaceful transition of that. So I'm on the fence of it, man. I don't know where to stand fully, but I don't agree with the fact that this was just pulled out of somebody that has completely different views. It was a populated area. We're using that particular area to create this state, and we had other options. It was a bad choice.
Yeah. I mean, regardless of how it got there, this is where we are now. And I definitely understand that standpoint. In fact, I listened to a debate that had one of the former prime ministers of Israel, and he even conceded that point. He was like, "Look," he was like, it is born. The nation is born in sin." He's like, "Our flag is dipped in blood like all the others." He was like, "But we're here now." He was like, "We have to come up with some sort of solution." And apparently, during Israel's history, he was like one of the closest leaders of Israel that came to finding peace. That came to getting things done. But as usually happens after a somewhat progressive movement in government comes down, it is taken by the far, far, far right. Like, way far right. It is crazy.
We are way past the point of being able to find another place to move these peoples. Back in the turn of the century, there were a couple of million. It was feasible to move them to another place. But now there's way too many. It's half of the population there now. You can't move these people. You can't just, all right, move a whole new nation now. It's way past that. We have to either get along or they have to fight it out. That's the only two options there.
So, and like there's several, basically since then, Israel has maintained that Palestine does not exist. It is not a state. Um, in Palestine, like, you know, they've even tried to say, look, we'll recognize you if you recognize us. And no, several Arab countries don't recognize Israel. I don't blame them. I don't recognize, you know, the former British governor of New Jersey. You know, why would I? So yeah, that's mostly what the strife has been over through most of the Middle East. It comes down to that. Um, like there's been war after war after war in which a few Israelis die and then massive amounts of Palestinians die, and it's gone on like that. Um,
Yeah, somehow this brand new damn nation's able to win wars against established countries. How in the fuck did that happen? Other than the fact that, oh yeah, America and Britain.
Yep. And through it all, one nation that has stood by Israel, regardless of whatever, has been the United States. And that brings me to a little story I want to talk about that I really didn't know about beforehand. And that is the USS Liberty incident. Do you know about that incident, Mike?
No, but on that first part, Israel should have fucking been erased again for the second time in history in 1947. But U.S. But Liberty.
So yeah, the USS Liberty. All right. So there was this thing. One of the many wars that have been fought was the 6 Day War, in which they were fighting with other nations, including Egypt. And we were backing Israel. We had a Navy spy ship in the Mediterranean, and we were kind of close by listening to. We were in international waters, and we were listening in on like transmissions from Cairo and whatnot. Well, the ship was marked, right? It had marking on the side. It was flying the American flag. There were sailors all over the ship. It was identifiable as an American vessel. And in fact, a few hours early in the morning, there were several flyovers by Israeli aircraft checking it out. This is in like 1967,
67,
like
the 6 Day War. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So, a few hours go by, and you know the aircraft are gone, and they're just floating out there in the water, and then boom, out of nowhere, a fucking torpedo. You know, they get torpedoed by one of these planes. The guns. I mean, you got you got aircraft running around shooting fire at them. You know, the U.S. They kept trying to. The first thing they targeted was all their communication equipment. So they couldn't call out for help. They flew the flag. They were like, "Hey, we're on your side. We're your guys." Lots of people died. A lot of sailors died, and like Israel was well aware that it was an American vessel. And when this one guy, I can't remember his name, but he was a fucking hero. He actually took a wire from the radio room and then climbed up one of the fucking masts and the destroyed antenna to get the fucking signal out to call for help. Well, America assumes that Egypt is attacking, so they load up some airplanes with some fucking nukes, and they're headed to Cairo. When word comes down that wait, it's Israel attacking us. So the airplanes turn around, go back to their aircraft carrier, change bombs, and by the time they get there, the multiple aircraft and gunboats that had been attacking the USS Liberty were gone. Their intention was to drum up U.S. support, you know, for helping them in their fight against Cairo, which, you know, almost fucking worked. So, yeah, and then the U.S. kind of tried to cover it up, and the Israelis covered it up, but it eventually came to fruition. There's a good documentary that the BBC did in 2002 called Dead in the Water, available on YouTube, and Al Jazeera also did a documentary on it. I got the link to the Al Jazeera one in the show notes. But yeah, so Israel attacked American vessels, killed American sailors, and in an attempt to get us to nuke Cairo. What ended up happening at the end of the 6 Day War was that we backed out and said, "All right, everybody be nice, and everything's gonna go back to normal now." That's enough of this. Everybody agreed, and as soon as we were out of earshot, Israel did a quote preemptive strike and completely obliterated Egypt's air force. So yeah, they have a history of using false flag attacks to drum up support. They have a history of lying in the media to drum up support. They have a history of using, oh, we're just poor Israel, we're just poor Jews, and everybody's it wants to kill us because we're Jews, and what are we going to do? And they also have a history of preemptive strikes, which anybody else would call, just a fucking strike, an offensive posture. They have a history of doing shit like that. So a lot of people didn't know that Israel attacked the U.S. military, and we were like pretty cool with it.
Yeah, I didn't know that myself. I did know about that so-called preemptive strike. I mean, I was like, what the fuck did Egypt do when that happened? When I read about that, it was like, what the fuck?
Yeah, let's fly over there and bomb the fuck out of those Israel. Oh, that's right.
It's kind of like the preemptive strike on Syria in this particular. What the fuck did Syria do?
And that's kind of what happened. That's kind of how the Gaza area. That's the background with Gaza is Gaza became a buffer zone between Israel and Egypt.
Since you mentioned Gaza, during that at the 6 Day War, and I'm not exactly sure of the timeline. We'd have to dig more into the 6 Day War itself. But with somewhere in the point of America's withdrawal and the close to the end of the war, and that preemptive strike on Egypt to draw them in, I'm not exactly sure when it was, but Israel did offer part of the West Bank to Jordan and the Gaza Strip to Egypt for peace in the region, and that's when the Arab Legion got together and said that there's going to be no peace. There's going to be no two states here. There's no negotiation.
Meanwhile, people are being born, and being like, "Well, I ain't got nothing to do with this shit."
Yeah. And there's a lot of people there that didn't have nothing to do with it when this whole line got drawn in the sand.
But effectively, what comes out of 1967 is this two-state concept, right?
Where and Israel having 99% of the freaking land over there.
Dude, it's worse than that. On the surface, that's what it looks like, but dude, it's way worse than that.
Oh yeah, we're getting ready to break into that new dirty word.
Yeah. Mike, what do you know about apartheid?
That thing that only happens for a short period of time in South Africa and nobody else knows where it is or what it is?
Yeah, it is defined as a policy or system of segregation or discrimination on grounds of race. Now, we can argue a little bit about race when it comes to the Jews versus the Palestinians. There is an argument that the majority of Jews that returned to Israel were, descended from European converts, right? That, they're not actually like genetically Jewish.
Interesting fact. The UN does not include race in their definition for apartheid.
Oh, it's the UN definition. Fuck yeah.
It is one group of people trying to dominate another, or a region, one group of people trying to dominate a region over another person's control. One group of people trying to oppress the movements or actions or speech of another group of people, and one group of people taking inhumane actions against another group of people.
Yeah, that's pretty good. That about sums it up, I would say. So what initially happens with this is they decide that they're going to give the West Bank and Gaza will be Palestinian territories, right? They'll be Palestine. Israel occupies Palestine, basically saying that if you are an Israeli citizen, a Jewish Israeli citizen, I have to be specific, you can go anywhere in Israel, West Bank, or Gaza. You can access any type of anything. You're free to do whatever you want to do. You can build a home wherever you want to build it. You can send your kids to school. You can marry who you want to marry. You can do pretty much anything you want to do. You can work any job you want to work. Or any job you can get. Well, you know how it goes. You're basically American white.
Full rights
Yeah.
and freedoms.
Right? You're an American white. You can vote and everything else. Well, then there are Palestinians who live within the nation of Israel. Now, see, they're a tier down. And I'm not saying that because I say that they're less of a person. I'm saying that because Israeli policy.
Because they have an ID that shows it.
Yes, Israeli policy puts them a tier below. Now, Israeli Palestinians can vote in Israeli elections. However, they're heavily discriminated against, and it's near impossible for them to actually vote. Right? They can go anywhere in Israel, and they can go anywhere into the West in the West Bank and Gaza. Right? Now, they can't go to the Gaza, marry someone in Gaza, and then come back to Israel because your citizenship does not apply to your wife. Now, the next tier down is West Bank Palestinians, right? So these Palestinians, they can't vote, but they can move and work in Israel. They can move to and from Israel, but they have to live in the West Bank area of Palestine.
They can work in a few places that allow them in Israel.
Yeah. They can't hold government office. They can't be teachers. Those are reserved for Israelis and Israeli Palestinians. So now, when you come to Gaza, Gaza is basically a concentration camp. They call it an open air prison. I say it's a concentration camp. They have built a wall around Gaza, and if you are a citizen of the Gaza Strip, you can't go anywhere. You can't cross that goddamn border. Absolutely not. That's not even a thought. Now, and also, you can never upgrade, right? You can't become a citizen of West Bank, Palestine, nor can you become a citizen of Israel. A Israeli citizen can downgrade their pass to West Bank Palestinian and then to Gaza, but it doesn't work the other way at all. There's no upward mobility. There is only top down. You know what I'm saying?
Yep. They got color-coded identification to go with that shit, man.
You can't get caught driving or walking on some roads if you're not Jewish. So, like, there is, that this is part of a problem. Like that is literal apartheid, right?
Well, they definitely dominate the region, including the little area of the region that they supposedly gave control over to the Palestinians in Gaza. They supposed pulled out of that and gave them control. When the fuck was that? In 2008? But no, they still control what happens in there. They still dominate that area. They definitely dominate the West Bank. They definitely dominate, East Jerusalem? That other little color code that I think you left out there. There's another level. The Palestinians in Jerusalem, they have their own ID.
I keep forgetting about Jerusalem. Yeah.
Yeah, they definitely dominate. Oppression, that's, right there. You just, they can't work in certain fields unless they have the right ID card. So that's definitely keeping them there. They oppress their vote and their speech. Definitely. They oppress their movement. The only thing left is inhumane actions, man.
Yeah, so they're, oh God, what was I going to say? God damn it. Oh, okay, so they Damn it. I lost it
Fucking
again.
hate that shit.
Fuck me though, right?
Words. Where are they when you need them?
Okay, yeah. When they pulled out, supposedly, what they actually did was they said, okay, we're going to draw a line. And then we're going to come like almost a half acre inside that line. And we're going to put up this 12-foot fucking wall. And then we're going to control all the water that comes in and out. And all the, like, you know, they have total control over Gaza. And they don't even recognize the West Bank and Gaza. That's not their names. It's Judea and Samaria. They refuse to say the words Gaza, West Bank, Palestine. I mean, they'll say Gaza, but they refuse to refer to it as Palestine.
You got to keep
It
that
is,
ancient hatred alive, man.
yeah, man. They won't even recognize not only the nation, they won't even recognize the people. They're Sumerians or Judeans. Like that is fucking disgusting to me. Like, how can you at least not recognize that these are people? You know what I'm saying? This is when it happened to them, it wasn't cool. You know what I'm saying? When they couldn't move around their homeland, their country where they were born through accident of birth, you know, they couldn't move around without proper passes. They couldn't go into certain areas. Like, it happened to them. It happened over here with like the Jim Crow bullshit. You know, and there's a lot of things in this that not only remind me of Jewish people under the occupation of the Third Reich in Germany, but of, you know, the African Americans here during Jim Crow, and even today, but especially during Jim Crow. You know, I see a lot of that, and that's not me being critical of Jewish people. That's me saying that, look, I know racism because I live here, and what I'm seeing is goddamn systemic racism. You know, that's exactly what, and it's not even race really. It's an ideology. It's a political identity, like, you know, fucking Nazis.
I also see that racism begets racism. Right here in America, yeah, yes, there's so much racism here against blacks, and it had gotten to the point that blacks deservedly became racist against white. Not all of them, you know, but it was about the same percentage of blacks that are racist against white that are of white that are against black. I mean, it's proportional, kind of. You know, it's deserved almost. I mean, they were treated horribly. You know, their people went through some shit. Of course, they're going to have some kind of feeling about it.
Yeah, they got a legitimate gripe.
People learn by example. The Jews were treated horribly. Yeah, okay, so they learned how to treat people horribly. It just goes to show that none of this is ever going to change until us adults change it so our children stop doing it.
Well, I mean, my argument is it's really not. It's based around. It's an ideology based around religion. If you take away this group's religion, like this, not just the Israelis, but the whole Arab world, take religion out of the equation. What is the difference between the people? If you take away if the religion is removed and is no longer part of the equation, and all this shit of a past identity and all that matter, you know, all that old shit, you know, make Israel great again or whatever. You take away their religion and you take away that, then what do you have? You just have a bunch of people that live in land, right?
You got a bunch of fucking family that's, you know, having a squabble.
Yeah, and the thing they were squabbling over would be gone. So, and then you have now, as a part of, you know, the way this apartheid shit works, you have these like far right wing, and I say this because they are almost all these people, these settlers, these far right wing Zionists that are going into West Bank and setting up homes. Like the West Bank map keeps getting smaller and smaller, like little holes are being eaten out of it because these settler communities are popping up. And these are like Zionist extremists that have been funded by the Israeli government, and that's not conspiracy theory, that's fucking facts, to go in there and set up, you know, places for Jewish people to live.
Which
So
is
not
backed by the
only
U.S. government.
Right. So not only, yeah, the U.S. said the settlements are okay. So not only are, you know, they not allowed to have their own nation. Now you got the people who hate them coming in there, and it led to a few months ago there was the Al-Aqsa Mosque. A bunch of settlers, Israeli settlers, extremist Zionists with guns, went in there and fucking raided this fucking Al-Aqsa Mosque during prayer. And then these same motherfuckers have the audacity to complain that this supposed Hamas attack on October 7th this year was, um, just uncalled for and unprecedented. We just didn't see it coming, and it was completely unprovoked. But because this was Yom Kippur, it was a Jewish holiday. Well, it was an Islamic holiday that the goddamn fucking extremists went in there and invaded the Muslims during their prayer. So what's the fucking difference? The only difference is, well, we like these brown people more than we like these brown people. So, whatever. They can settle. Well, fuck that. And that has caused a huge push with and people around the world that want to use boycotts against Israel to force Israel to change its policies, because that's what we did with South Africa for their apartheid. People just started like, you're going to keep doing this, we're going to write you off, and eventually South Africa was forced to change its policies. Without military involvement, you just fucking you stop doing business with them. Well, ahead of this current crisis, a few years ago, there was this huge push in America and several other nations for what's considered called anti-BDS legislation. What do you know about all this, Mike?
That particular, it's first I've heard of that.
All right, so a few years ago, Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, um, him and his cabinet came up with this policy that they call the new anti-Semitism. It basically says that anybody who criticizes Zionist policies in Israel and whatnot is guilty of anti-Semitism ipso facto. This, we've already discussed this. It's bullshit, right? That's bullshit. I can dislike fascists. I don't like the Nazis, but Germans don't bother me.
Oh yeah, that one you were talking about that the other day. Yep, yeah, that goes on earlier. You can disagree with somebody, you can criticize somebody, and it doesn't necessarily mean you hate them. And if I don't like somebody's policies or what they're doing, I can I can boycott them for what they're doing without having a particular feeling about the person or people themselves. Like this particular example here, right now, right today, if somebody decided that they didn't want to import something from Israel because they don't support their actions or the level of response or whatever, I wouldn't call that anti-Semitic. I would call that anti-war. Just because you don't like somebody's actions doesn't mean you dislike them.
Right, right. So, Israel basically is now saying, okay, to boycott Jewish products because or Israeli exports or whatever, because of a because of being opposed to Israel's actions, is anti-Semitism. So they started this push for legislation in the U.S. and abroad called anti-BDS legislation, which wore the face of fighting anti-Semitism. So there's at least 36 states in the U.S. that basically state that if you're a business and Israel exports a product and they're offering it for sale, you cannot boycott that product based on these grounds. You have to actually sign an agreement not to boycott Israel, which is fucking fascist ass bullshit.
Yeah, that's forced commerce. That's fascist as hell. I do not agree with that. And I would have to check the language myself to bear a true opinion. But if it definitely states that you can't boycott them in any way, that then I would have to say that's definitely fascist and would be surprising to have gotten that kind of language through.
Not when you bring in Israel. Evangelicals, which run the fucking government apparently, love Israel. They won't do anything bad for Israel. So all you got to do is throw in anti-Semitism, and everybody who's trying not to look like a Nazi
It's
is
going
going
to
to
sign a
support it.
paper without reading the damn thing. Yes.
And in every state, which includes our own, that has signed that, that is what happened. So in 2015, oil were discovered. Oil was discovered off the coast of Israel, and oil was discovered off the coast and underneath Gaza.
You can't have them having that.
Well, you know what would be really convenient if we had a whole bunch of oil to sell? If we made it to where people had to buy it from me. I mean, that's just capitalism 101, right?
Absolutely, mate. I mean, yeah, I would use the same kind of rules. In fact, I have an idea that we have discussed that uses said kind of rules.
Yeah, yeah. So now you that bearing in mind, um, Israel is protected by what they call the Iron Dome. Mike, you want to give some details on the Iron Dome?
Oh, the U.S. Patriot missile system that completely protects, everything coming in and out of Israel's airspace.
Mike, if I were to fly a paper plane over the border of Israel, what would happen to it?
It probably would never touch the ground.
So on October 7th, the most militarized country in the world, with the heaviest intelligence and the most impenetrable defense system the world has ever seen,
Especially the airspace.
decides to hold a music festival near the Palestinian border. It was the Jordanian border.
It was closer to the Lebanese border. It was up there on what the northern part of the Gaza Strip that's still under the Palestinian Authority. It was close to that area, is what I thought.
Something like that. Now, this whole area, a bunch of terrorists show up and just start fucking killing the shit out of everybody, right? For 6 fucking hours. 6 hours. Now,
How did they get there?
Israel is roughly the size of Jersey, maybe? Not even. Smaller than Jersey, right? We're talking like slightly larger than Rhode Island, right?
Yeah, it's pretty damn small. It's the size. It's smaller than one of our not the smallest state, but it's small as one of our smallest states up there. It's pretty damn small.
6 hours, during which Hamas supposedly was flying over the border in little fucking like hang glider craft, like some shit you'd make on a video game. It looked like some shit we'd make in Scrap Mechanic, just flying over the border and doing all kinds of shit. All of a sudden, their iron domes down, and wouldn't you know it, something that you couldn't on during fucking height of traffic on a Monday, you couldn't take more than 2 hours to get from one end to the other. It took 6 hours for the military, which is never 6 hours away in Israel. You're never more than a couple of buildings away from a fucking military outpost. So it took 6 hours for them to get there and stop this. At the end of which there were like 200 captives and 1,400 dead. A heavy toll. When compared by population density, it is roughly equivalent to, I believe it was 20 of 9/11 deaths. So it was the U.S. 9/11s times 20, apparently, adjusted for population density, if you get my drift.
It's now labeled as the worst atrocity to happen against the Jewish people since the Holocaust.
You know who put out that headline?
The Jews.
Well, the Israelis. The Israelis, Mike.
Well, they are then, aren't they? Same.
I mean, there are Jews in America that are not Israeli. See. Like, yes, they were Jewish people, but it was Israel that put out that statement. Yeah, Al Jazeera had a little bit of fun with it. Actually, it was kind of funny. Yeah, they started pointing to all these other wars and attacks that Israel had been through since 1948, and they're like, I mean, it is the biggest one from this group, but it's by far not the largest, attack against Jews. But that is irrelevant, honestly. The size of it is irrelevant. It was an atrocious act. If it was Hamas that carried it out, which is what the narrative is, that's all I have to go on. Okay, I feel like it seems more like a 9/11 was an inside job type thing, but this one seems like it might have actually been. There's a little bit more leaning towards that. Um, yeah, the propaganda with this has been crazy. The Israelis immediately put out reports that babies were being beheaded by these Hamas attackers on October 7th, and that turned out to be false. There were no beheaded babies.
Yeah, too bad our president didn't bother to fact check that before he started preaching it over here.
Well, you bring that up, so let's get into it. I at first was hoping that Biden would get there and start ripping Netanyahu a new asshole. But then I started thinking about it. And this was before he ever landed. I started thinking about this. I was actually watching the reports about the hospital bombing, which we'll also talk about. But I was I was thinking that, maybe he'll do something, but I started thinking about it. I'm like, well, if he does anything negative, if he says one cross word about Israel's actions,
He'll lose the election. Trump wins.
Trump gets the White House. Now, I'm thinking there could be a possibility if Biden retains office that we see a reversal, because some of the things he says, he sounds like he's warning them, right? He's like, "We have your back. Do not let this become such and such," But he's saying things and saying other things that seem to contradict. But I'm thinking he's trying to let it be known that, look, I can't really do anything, but don't
But our actions are definitely not on that. Our actions are, yeah, we got your back no matter what, and including up to threatening other nations. Hey, don't do nothing or
yeah. But again, if he doesn't, Trump gets the White House.
And on that, Biden, this how deep his support still has to be with Israel is that he never even reversed the fucking Trump decision to move the embassy and recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. That would have been one of the first things he probably should have done to restore the quo over there. It would be to move the Israel back to Tel Aviv like everybody else.
Well, I mean, you got to think that during Trump's reign, there was this huge rise of anti-Semitism, and they used that. I think, man. They're guilt tripping everybody about the anti-Semitism, so it kind of gives them a free pass. And they know our election cycles. They know that America is basically helpless during this particular time. You know what I mean? Nobody can really do anything. So if there was ever a time to do something like this, it's now, when America can't change its course. In a couple of years, maybe something different. But as it stands right now, America can't do anything unless we for sure want Trump back.
Yeah, and we definitely don't want that. But yeah, it's gotten so freaking deep, though. We've got an aircraft carrier strike force sitting over there. We've got China moving a naval strike force right in the same damned area. You've got freaking Jordan threatening to jump into it. You've got freaking Hezbollah up in Lebanon. You've got another freaking group down in Yemen that's already been launching missiles and shit. this whole region is primed to pop. And our guys are sending more force over there to support Israel in this, and the rest of the region over there is supporting Palestine.
Yep.
Now, let's pause at this particular point in the narrative because we still haven't gotten to the last part of showing apartheid over in that part. And because we're still in somewhat of the current era of this entire conflict, so we might as well bring up some. Let's jump to the other side of the fence just a little bit, because it kind of sounds like we've been ragging on Israel and its right to exist and stuff. Let's kind of take it for a minute to the other side and try to get that perspective. That
Hell yeah.
They've had the state handed to them; it was created there, and that's the position that we're in now. We've gone through this whole thing that it was, done in the mandate back in the early 20s, and the two-state draw with the UN resolutions in 47, and then the 6-Day War when the borders got moved again, and then again after in 2000 when the whole UN and Israel tried to come up with saying, all right, we can move the borders here and giving you a little bit of your borders back, but that's the end of it, and it was rejected as well. And then Israel again in 2008 said, hey, look, you've got an election, you've got your own rule, we're going to back out. And so on paper, Israel's been trying to have peace there since their creation, for the last 70 years. And, so what has it been? Has it been 70 years of occupation, or has it been 70 years of trying to survive and actually have your nation recognized? So from that side, what has Israel been done to show their side of peace?
Nothing. They've never. That's been the whole thing. Like they could have lived peacefully side by side, in their own nation, be it occupied or however they got it. They got it. They could have done that, but settlers, and then fucking treating the apartheid and this rejecting their concepts of look. I have a hard time looking at it from the Israeli perspective, because it's foreign and familiar, if that makes sense. You know what I'm saying? Like I've seen that type of logic before, and if they want to exist in a peaceful place and be peaceful, they could have done that. They could have made that choice, but they have instead bullied, oppressed, and stepped on the people that they're supposed to be trying to get along with. So to the point now they argue, well, what is Israel to do? Does Israel not have the right to defend itself as a nation? Absolutely it does. But so does Palestine, who they refuse to even recognize as a state. So they have the right to defend themselves. They have the right to exist, but so do other people. Their right does not supersede the others.
Well, both sides of this particular conflict refuse to acknowledge each other. Now, I get it that everybody's, it's not Palestine at war with Israel. It's, Hamas. Well, I have to point to the election and say, hey, the Palestinian people there voted Hamas in, and I've not seen any news popping off about, hey, the Palestinian people protesting against Hamas and trying to root Hamas out of their lands or anything along those lines. I mean, in fact, everything that I've seen points to the Palestinian people still supporting Hamas, by a majority, not all of them, but a majority, at least in that area.
All right, so let's bring it to a hypothetical here at home then, right? So let's say it's 1960s America. Segregation is still going on, and you have the Black Panther Party, right? And kind of they're a militant, somewhat extremist party, but you have the Black Panther Party. Now, say that the U.S. decided, all right, fine. You guys in the South can make your own law, and we'll do things different elsewhere. Let's say that happened, and there was an election, and one of the people in the election was, say, Huey Newton, the founder of one of the founders of the Black Panther Party, right? So in the South during this time, the majority of the population is black, African Americans. Even in these like heavily segregated areas, the majority of the population was still black, right? So what would have happened? You would have had the extremist side win the election, right? The people, the majority of people have been oppressed by these people for so fucking long. They finally get a voice, and somebody is in that voice that recognizes how they feel, and they're like, yeah, we want our own fucking no, you ain't. We're going to stand with the people who fight for us. That's how I feel. That
Oh, I'm not debating that the Palestinians, have something to stand for behind in Hamas. I'm not trying to say that there's anything illegitimate there. I was just saying that, people are distinctly separating this to being a war between Israel and Hamas. Well, like I said, the Palestinians voted Hamas in.
But that's another thing.
To me, it's Palestinian. Hamas is Palestine. I mean, I know they're basically largely Lebanese based, but like I said, if the people support it, then I have a hard time separating it.
Well, right. They're multinational, really, but it's basically an Islamic. It's an Islamic form of Zionism. Basically, what I'm saying, they're basically like Israel, except they're the Islamic side. And I get that reaction, but here's the thing: Israel has no right to complain. Israel has nothing to say. If they say, "Look, all right, you're your own nation. You can have your own votes. What the fuck ever," which they never did, but you can do that. You can have your own votes. You can vote who you want in. You can have office, and the country that you just gave the right to vote someone you don't like. Tough titty. That's just the way the goddamn world works.
Well, the problem I see is there hasn't been an election there since. So I am unsure, and it's because of ignorance. I haven't been able to dig into the entire history of Hamas and all that completely. And, the news that gets over here is, completely untrustworthy. So
because Palestinians are no longer allowed to vote.
But is that Hamas won the vote? Is it Hamas that stopped them from being able to vote, or
nope? It's Israel.
Well, see, that's the part of it that I'm missed on. That is, how would Israel do that if they gave it to them?
Like Israel still has everything pretty well locked down. So like they can't there's you get too many Palestinians like hanging out trying to run an election.
You don't invade something you've already occupied, mate.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. That's another thing I was going to come to is Israel isn't defending itself; it's occupying. They like even the UN calls those areas occupied Palestine. So they are occupying the area, regardless of what they say. They are occupying the area. The military runs everything there. They are under military rule, which is not the case for Israelis. It is only the case for Palestinians. Like I said, that whole thing of them backing up and saying y'all can do what you want. Well, once they elected Hamas in, they were like, well, never mind, you can't do what you want, and just went back to the way things always were. They never really left, man. They never left. They just said, all right, and just stayed there. They started building the wall after that, though.
Yeah, they started building the wall at the same time when they said they backed out. They walled it off, and as far as the paper shows is that Hamas won the election, and Hamas is the one that says that there haven't been any elections in there since, and even Hamas was fighting against Palestine, the Palestinian Authority, because the Palestinian Authority didn't recognize the election. They said it was rigged. I don't know. That particular election system is way more convoluted than ours, and I can't make sense of our shit. But so it kind of became its own little separate nation state of itself in its own way. So there's basically Palestine, Gaza, and Israel. So because the Palestinian Authority doesn't recognize it. So you got three different entities there. But the Palestinians in Gaza the Palestinians voted for Hamas, and then, the people split at that point. And it's been muddied from there because, it's just, it's a bunch of nonsense. Who's fighting where, what stories are true, who invaded what first, who fired the first shot to break this particular piece. You can't make sense of none of it.
So you want to talk about the hospital?
That's one of the things you can't make sense of.
Sure enough, there's so much fucking propaganda. But the thing is that sitting there following the propaganda and where it seems to be coming from, I tend to lean away from the Israeli narrative, right? Like I'm fairly certain that, the people who were there on the ground knew what they saw and knew what they heard. And, yeah.
Well, there's video of it. It definitely wasn't what the Israeli folks say it was a failed rocket falling from the sky and exploding on the hospital
Nah,
because
man, did you
falling
hear that
rockets don't
fucking
whistle.
whistle? Yeah, you heard that whistle. That fucking whistle, bro. Because I actually watched several videos of these rockets that the Hamas are using. And they sound like sparklers, kind of. Or maybe bottle rockets. But
Yeah.
they don't sound like that they don't have that whistle.
Well, I can't say that, I would base that on pictures you see of what Hamas uses, because there's some reports, and I'm pretty sure that they're getting some modern shit that, the United States left behind in Afghanistan. I'm pretty sure some of that's already made its way into Hamas hands.
I don't know, but it certainly made its way into Hezbollah, so it's possible.
Yeah, there's already been photos of motherfuckers using M4 rifles and fucking some shoulder mounted uh, rocket launchers that they wouldn't have normally had.
But yeah, the Israelis, like, they had already bombed this. They bombed, like, I think it was something like I was looking at the numbers last night. Multiple hospitals have been bombed, but they had already bombed this one once, and it hadn't done a lot of damage. And the Israeli Defense Force actually called the hospital and was like, y'all got to evacuate. And then they got bombed.
Which,
And
part of the UN's thing about war crimes with targeting infrastructure being inhumane and war crimes and stuff about power and water and all that stuff, I disagree with. But hospitals, I fully agree with. You should never have to tell a fucking hospital you got to evacuate. Avoid targeting a fucking hospital. Even if it's a safe haven of your enemy, don't fucking blow up a damn hospital.
Drop in some goddamn paratroopers.
Surround the fucking place and, just, tell them to come out, bring your wounded out and we'll fucking, feed and clothe them or whatever.
No, Israel ain't having none of that.
Yeah, none of this shit. Bombing a hospital, that I classify as fucking inhumane. And I'm an asshole. Which would absolutely check the last box for apartheid.
Oh yeah, there's no doubt that what's going on is ethnic cleansing by any definition, except the Israeli definition, who you would think would be experts on ethnic cleansings and what have
you. Yeah, you'd figure that would be a lesson that'd stick around for more than a generation.
No, they doggedly pursued Nazis so they could probably interrogate them and learn how they did it.
Which kind of brings it up. Are they fascist? Shit. Yeah, we know they practice apartheid. So
I was just coming to that after this.
So we got what fascism's what it's a sense of a national importance. You got to have yourself a mythical past. Exclusive use of propaganda for fear mongering. You got to have the enemies coming after you, which means you have to have a friend-enemy distinction. It's good and evil, bad versus good kind of stuff's got to be there. And what is it? It's one group of people over another.
Yeah. So you got all right.
Not necessarily race.
Not necessarily, no. Was an Italian philosopher who grew up during the years of Mussolini in Italy. In June of '95, he published an article in the New York Review of Books about fascism. In the article, he outlined a list of features that are typical of what he called eternal fascism or fascism. He allowed that fascism in different countries takes on different combinations of these characteristics and may not have all of them. Yet he argued the presence of even one of these characteristics could serve as a seed for fascism to grow anywhere. 1. The cult or tradition. This is the belief that the truth is already known once and for all. A fascist believe there is no need to advance in learning. All right, let's compare that with Israel and Zionism.
Well, they're definitely religious based, and they believe that their particular sect of that religion is the absolute truth from God, even not necessarily just truth, but it was ordained. So we got that.
All right, which also will cover the rejection of modernity, right? Fascists reject Enlightenment and its evidence-based rationality, and that also I would tie that in with their religious, concepts as well,
and their mythical past.
Fascist leaders act impulsively. This is the third one, without thinking or planning ahead. I literally heard Benjamin Netanyahu say, "I don't know what comes after. I only know that we're going to wipe Hamas off the face of the earth." And Hamas he equates apparently to the Palestinian people. So what he's actually saying is we're going to wipe the Palestinian people off the face of the earth. And he has no thinking ahead on what is next. So yeah, check there. Number 4, no analytical criticism. Fascists ignore nuance and see any disagreement as treasonous. In Israel's state, they would see any disagreement as anti-Semitism, but I think it still applies.
I agree.
Fear of difference. Fascists fear diversity. Thus, they are racist by definition. Of course, religious and ethno groups like that, But yeah, I would say so. They are terrified of the Palestinian people. I heard several debates where people say, well, what happens if the Palestinians get it back and there is no more nation of Israel? What will it be like to be an Israeli living in Palestine? Well, should have thought about that. Obsession with a plot. Oh, wait, I skipped one. Number 6, appeal to a frustrated middle class. I'm not sure on that one.
Could you possibly, on that particular definition, instead replace middle class with the religious side of it?
The religious right?
Yeah. So instead of it being a economic deal push on that, it would be a religious push.
It's an interesting concept. It's something I can think about too. I'm not. I think you could be able to.
Because Christianity is on the decline worldwide, and in that area, it is definitely a minority position, which would kind of put it in a middle class position if you put religion on an economic scale.
Yeah, I would see that. All right, so number 7, obsession with the plot. The followers must be made to feel besieged. An eternal enemy is provided. Immigrants, Muslims, Hispanics, blacks, etc., etc. Yeah.
Well, you got that biblical and historical.
And current. Number 8, anti-elitism. The followers are made to feel humiliated by the wealth and strength of the educated elite to create resentment. They put themselves not so much humiliated by wealth and strength, but they're an oppressed people, right? They're the Jewish victim thing. You know what I'm saying?
I don't know. They would definitely call their core religion is based on faith opposed to knowledge, and definitely calls people that seek knowledge fools. So I would say that they're definitely fearful of people in a more knowledgeable position than they are.
Yeah. All right. Number 9, fascism is trafficking with the enemy. Pacifism is trafficking with the enemy. Fascists believe that life is permanent warfare. Therefore, a desire for peace is treasonous. I have literally heard people saying that people crying out for a ceasefire are anti-Semitic. Now, it's not a huge thing, but it is being said. So,
well, the fact that both sides fail to acknowledge the other, and so it's kind of hard to go for peace on that.
You got the cult of heroism. Fascist is eager to die a hero's death. So yeah, I mean, they're pretty fired up about it. I sent, I don't know, Mike, did you ever watch that video of that old man?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've since seen other videos with people in like places of power in the government saying very similar stuff. Basically, that they need to wipe out Palestinians.
Yeah. I'm seeing this more as a religious difference, but back when we did our little Bible thing and religious thing, we already found, and on fascism that we did on that, we've already declared that religion is fascism, just with a different cloak. And though it might be hard to put Israel as fascist, we can definitely put them as a religious nation, a theocracy. And so yeah, I think we're going to conclude that they're pretty much fascist, mate. They seem to be checking all the boxes. Did I lose you over there?
Oh yeah, sorry, I was pressing the wrong button. No, I was. I agree with you. They're fashy, and I was looking at a picture of the Rafah border crossing, and there it's in occupied. It's in Gaza, right? So it shouldn't have a bunch of like stars of David, like stone stars of David around the top, and I was just looking at the picture of it. It looks exactly how the Nazis decorated their shit with swastikas. Yeah, it's like this concrete square with all these fucking stars of David like embossed around the top of it. It looks just like if you changed it to a swastika, I would tell you it was in Hitler's Germany. It and I know it's just architecture, but I mean it says something. You know what I'm saying? Like they even look it. They're even starting to look the part.
Yeah,
It's
but border crossing down there has befuddled me. Why in the world did they keep control of the fucking southern border? That's what is it? 100 fucking yards wide? Why didn't they just leave that border at Gaza to Egypt?
Yeah, and here's another thing that pissed me off very early on in this conflict, and I said it was going to happen before it did. They were forcing the 1.1 million people in the North Gaza to move to the south. And I said that day, I said they are going to wait a couple of days and bomb the shit out of the south. And what happened 2 days later? They bombed the shit out of southern Gaza. I mean, bombed the ever loving hell out of it to the point that the border is no longer crossable. And as far as people getting on an airport and leaving, there used to be an airport in Gaza, and Israel destroyed it in 2001. So the only way out of this prison that Israel built for the people of Gaza is through a border crossing that they have bombed the shit out of.
Or by boat, which, who the hell wants to do that out in the fucking ocean? And who the hell knows where the bomb's going to go?
The Israelis have them blockaded by sea, man. They have fucking ships out there. You ain't leaving, but you ain't staying. That only leaves one option. You dying.
Well, he did say he was going to eradicate them. And they have dropped more bombs in 2 weeks than America dropped in a year in Afghanistan.
It is
just
the
put that in
heaviest
perspective.
bombing. Yeah, it is the heaviest bombing campaign. It was over 6,000 bombs in just over 6 days.
Yeah, that's World War II level bombing.
That is beyond World War II bombing.
I'm pretty sure we were dropping that much a day at some points.
Yeah, but these bombs are above and beyond. These aren't the same bombs. These are much stronger, much more powerful,
and in a much more densely populated area.
Exactly.
Which
so I guess
kind of pushes the limit. Is that inhumane?
I would think so. When you tell somebody to move to the room, you have a group of people that you don't like, and you got them walled in an area to keep them separated from your part of the population. They're starving them. They're dying of dehydration, disease. They have no access to medical care or electricity. And you tell them to move into a smaller section, a little area, and then, well, you burn them to death. Now, who else did that? Who the fuck else did that? Oh, that's right. It was the fucking Nazis. And they did it to the Jews. They put them in fucking gas chambers and they killed them. This is essentially what they did to the people in southern Gaza. They moved everybody, they told everybody in northern Gaza to go to the south. They bombed the hell out of the south. So everybody that was going just turned the fuck around. You know, they're like, what the fuck are we supposed to do? If I'm going to die, let me at least die at home. You know, so that's what's going on there now, folks. It's bullshit. It's concentration camp style fucking genocide. It's bullshit. Sure, the Israelis had a right to defend themselves, and if they stay in their own goddamn borders, they can do that. But they won't. They fucking won't. And
I love this.
What?
100 miles away, fucking completely unscripted. I asked you that little question, and you used the exact fucking example that I was going to lead with to it to support it. I love it.
Yeah.
You take one group of people and you move them to a specific location, and then you destroy that location, or you kill the people that are now in that location. That's been done in history before. Where was that? And you just, yep, perfect.
Yeah. Except there's not even a dream of hope. The Nazis at least put up a friendly sign at the entrance to Auschwitz. Work makes you free.
Yeah, where's the promise of freedom for fucking Gaza?
There is none. You know, and that's what they learned from the Nazis, that, you know, there can be no hope. So on that note, I think we're pretty well caught up. Well, I'm sure there'll be updates. As of this recording, Israel has yet to begin its impending ground invasion, but you know, it's a moot point really when they do. They don't never have to. I wouldn't be surprised if I got done recording, turned on the news, and found out that, you know, Gaza had been mysteriously nuked. I wouldn't be surprised in the least.
No, it wouldn't surprise me at all. Of course, you know, with the tension that's currently over there with, what is it now? One, two, hell shit, we got one, two.
The rest of the world?
Yeah, I'm just, how many freaking nations are actually there with munitions? Not just, you know, threatening shit or talking about shit or having feelings. I'm talking about actually there with the power to destroy shit. So
all of them.
Fucking hell, man. And you can't even say that, well, they're shooting missiles into Israel because, you know, fucking Syria hadn't done a goddamn thing. And fucking Israel launched them, destroyed 2 airports. But, you know, what the hell did Yemen have to do with anything? Launching fucking missiles over at fucking, you know, U.S. destroyers. And, you know, who the hell's fucking launching damn missiles at U.S. bases and over in Iraq? Who's trying to start the freaking war here? Because this skirmish is getting ready to pop off, if we ain't careful, into an actual world war. Somebody wants it. One particular group over than another wants this shit more than anybody else.
Yeah. Yep. And I was actually going to play a little game with you today. I was thinking about it yesterday. I was like, you know, I was going to have a thing where I was going to say, let's make a bet on whether or not you're going to see a bunch of Christians, like Christian subgroups, committing mass suicide because of the armies of the world surrounding the nation of Israel and all that Revelation shit. And I'm watching TV last night, and I found out that there's this Christian group in Kenya who has done just that. So it's not fun anymore.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think we're going to have to wait too long for that. Yeah, I guess somebody already beat us to us.
I've been watching a lot of like John Hagee and shit too, seeing what the evangelicals are saying, and it's exactly what I thought. This is it. This is it, folks.
It's always it. It was it the last 3 times.
It's never not been it. There's not been one period in history since that stupid fucking book got wrote, the Book of Revelations. since some fucking epileptic madman scrawled this out in exile and fucking what I assume was rat feces on a fucking stone wall. Since he wrote this shit out, there's never been a time that it hasn't been coming. It's always here. It's always now. Every world leader is always the Antichrist. I mean, come the fuck on. Get over this shit. But honestly, I hope they're right. I hope they're fucking right. I hope that God and Moses and Jesus, Moses, and Muhammad all come down and take their faithful with them. Just go. Just fucking be gone. Let me live in this period of tribulation without you. I'd be cool with that. You know, maybe we could have peace, not only in the Middle East, but everywhere else. You know, maybe we could start looking at some shit. It's like we could just look around at each other like, well, what now? You know? We were wrong and we can move on and, well, fuck that shit. It's nice now.
Well, Moses, Muhammad, and whoever the Messiah of the chosen people is actually going to be whenever he decides to show up, yeah, I really hope they do show up and take their people with them. Jesus, he never showed up. He's 2,700 years too late.
You hear that, Grandpa? Me and you want the same thing. For Jesus to come back and for you to be lifted up into heaven.
No, the Jesus one's already been, his time's come and gone. He told his people that he would be back in their lifetime, and, well, that didn't happen.
Well, then you get into all the subtle nuances that they try to fucking justify with.
Well, yeah, the apologetics crowd, yeah. But it don't matter which math you use or whose time scale of lifespans you use. He's late. He didn't show up in those people's lifetime and when he said he would. So that one's done and gone. Muhammad still might have a chance. I don't recall him actually giving a timeline. And the Messiah for the chosen group, he hasn't showed himself yet. So that one's still up in the air. It's kind of hard to have a prophecy without an end date.
Well, actually, that's the only way a smart person would have a prophecy. John the Revelator, he didn't actually put all the stuff that they attribute to an end time comes from like the earlier Gospels. John the Revelator just said that there would be all kinds of different signs and stuff, and he just talked about random shit that was going on at the time. But he was most people think he was actually talking about like Roman rule and Nero and whatnot, and it was mostly just gobbledygook and babble, like Alex Jones type shit.
And really, if you want to talk about, people of that time writing about the end of the world, their world ended. That lifestyle is gone. The empires of the day are long since for fucking, only in the annals of history do they exist. So, their world's ended. That Armageddon's come and gone.
Well, actually, most theocratic states tend to lock themselves in the time in which they were started, right? So you got, for instance, most of like your hardcore Muslim countries, those theocracies. They pretty much live as they did when the Prophet Muhammad came. Your Mennonites and your Amish people over here, they live pretty much as they did when their religion began, and it could be argued that they're a theocratic type of system, right? So, like, and you see this kind of in a through line with them, is they stay pretty much in that tradition from the time in which the religion that is ruling was founded. So, yeah, the modern world doesn't really have a bearing on it. You know what I'm saying? Like, those times and those people, like their time ended, but for the people, the extremists, the hardcore believers, they don't. It's in Islam. It's actually considered a sin to try and modernize the Quran or to change. They call it innovation within religion, and they say that that's one of the reasons Muhammad had his message was because of all the innovations in religion since the original message. So it's forbidden actually to progress your society, which is run by this religion, any further than when the religion was founded. And that's not just.
It's kind of hard to progress a society past that point when you're always warring and destroying your society.
There's that, and like I said, you look at how the family system is in, say, Saudi Arabia, right? A woman could be stoned to death if she's caught driving. You know, that still is very indicative of the time in which the religion was formed in the area that it was formed in. You know, and they hold that to their religious belief. You know, they do that because of their religion. So when religion rules, it pretty much locks itself in.
Well, I'm not talking. When I said the world ending, I wasn't talking about like an ideal, something that could be brought back from paper to existence. I was referring more toward like the Byzantine Empire. When that shit got wiped out, their world ended. The people still existed. They still had their ideals, their beliefs, and their way of life that spread out and got absorbed into everything else around them. But their world
Right. We
ended.
still see it in like the caliphate governments and whatnot. We still see pieces of that.
Yeah, but that's the level of world ending that I was getting to. Their Armageddon had happened. A different group of people afterwards getting back in and saying, "Hey, we found some books and some papers and some writings of stories long past. We can live by this. That's a resurrection of a way of life, and a new world that's based on the same old ideals, but the world that was written about their Armageddon came and gone. Babylon, their world ended. Canaan, their world ended. That level of world ending, it happens all the time, and it can easily be written about as an Armageddon of a people, but as a whole world, you're stretching it there.
Yeah. But then again, maybe they were right. Maybe this war in Israel does actually lead to the literal destruction of the world. It's not out of the realm of possibility.
It's not. I mean, self-fulfilling prophecies are easy to make and to make happen.
Yeah, thank you for. I was going there.
I mean, it's pretty easy when you live in a place that, let's say Earth, that, has, constant wars like Earth, to write a story thinking that, hey, we're going to destroy ourselves. And, to let us know that the end of it is there's going to be a big fucking war. No shit.
I mean, because that's what's always happened. I mean, like we've always been at war. Like I was watching, I forget what, but Jane Goodall when she was studying groups of chimps, like I think they're called troops. It'll grow to a certain point, and then they'll divide, right? And then once there's a new like alpha of the group, that alpha will go seek it will take several of the chimps to the split off group and they'll fight it out, you know. And that's, I mean, so that's inherent in who we are as a species. It's inherent in our primate DNA. It's what we do. I would like to live in a world where we've moved beyond that. But it doesn't sadly seem like that's going to happen in my lifetime. So, I'll just smoke pot about it.
Well, how long did it take for us to develop reason? And how long is it going to take for us to use reason to develop our next stage of evolution? Or have we completely stunted our evolution by our own arrogance and technology?
Facts.
Because we're nothing more than animals. I've started that off with that. Anybody that thinks anything different is completely arrogant amongst themselves to a point of incredulity. And if you're doing it on a biblical stance, then it's written in there that we're animals too.
I will actually give a person who doesn't believe that we are descended from primates a bit of benefit of doubt until they have been informed of the facts. Now, once they have been informed of the situation and then choose to disregard the clear evidence and proof, and once they choose to reject that, then I have some disdain. Then I find them to be willfully ignorant. But to have not been told, I can understand. I mean, there's places like Texas where it's, you know, kind of illegal. So, yeah.
I don't
But
think you need anybody to tell you that we're an animal. That has always befuddled me.
no, it takes somebody telling you that you're not.
Right, and for somebody to tell you that you're not, to me, requires a special kind of lack of self-awareness to even contemplate the possibility of anybody being less than an animal or more than an animal. I mean, we have the exact same characteristics as every other fucking animal that anybody, including a damn backwater Texan, is going to have access to seeing. We have two eyes, we have a mouth, we eat, we shit, we sleep, we bleed, we breathe, all this stuff. What would make us different? The fact that we can speak. Animals make noises, they communicate, so that ain't it. The fact that we feel pain. Well, animals feel pain. They're just better at hiding it than we are. Or is it the fact that we just build shit? Well, animals build shit. Not many of them, but there are animals that build shit. Look at a fucking beaver. Foxes dig burrows. If that ain't building, I don't know what it is. Digging a hole in the ground, but it's making a home out of something that wasn't a home before. We use tools. Plenty of animals use tools. You stick a stick in the ground to pull termites out. That's using a fucking tool. Throw a stick up in the air to knock something out. That's using a fucking tool.
I saw this thing about a fish that will like throw rocks at like a clam or some sort of like oyster or some shit, some sort of like shelled creature on the bottom. But it'll sit there and like just throw fucking rocks at it until it breaks it, And that's tool use. Like that's a fucking fish. Yeah.
Yeah, I get it. Somebody might not know about those specific little tiny things, but to say that there's enough difference between us and your dog sitting in your fucking living room to think that we're different from an animal, where the hell have you been living? What rock are you under?
Yeah. I mean, you look at a dog in its eyes and you feel a kinship with it, kind of, just like you would with a person. And you don't get that when you look at it. Well, I mean, maybe some people do when they look at like, bacteria or something like that. But yeah, you look at a mammal and the way we react to mammals versus other animals historically anyway, and like some of that's changing. But we've always been fond of mammals. We've always kept mammals as some kind of pet. We've always enjoyed mammals, and we've always feared snakes and insects and shit like that. Logical reasons, sure, but like I said, it's we recognize that on some level. You can't look at chimpanzees in a zoo and then look at the other people looking at the chimpanzees and not see the similarities. Like it's so obvious.
So yeah, to put us on a pedestal to think that we're going to do anything different, we're going to act like animals. We're going to be territorial. We're going to be tribal. We're going to be familial. Family structured. I think familial is it. Yeah. We're going to fight over resources. We're going to tend to our own, but we are social. So when there's plenty to go around, we don't fight over resources. We share them. We try to help each other out unless it supersedes the first two. You got to look out for yourself. My survival over your survival kind of a thing. I can't help you if I can't help myself. I can't share my food if I can't eat. I can't share my tree if I don't have a branch to sit on. It's rooted all the way down into primal territory dispute and resource. Do I live or do you live? That's the root of it all. But like I say, we're social, so if there's plenty for me to live, I don't mind sharing. It's when it gets tight, when there's not enough for me to live, that's when it ain't just me, but that's when the focus shifts toward self-preservation. There's not enough to go around, so we got to fight about it because you have the same view. You want to live. You want to survive. There's one apple. We're both hungry. Do we share that? There's no other one in sight. If we share it, we both might die before we find another fucking apple. That's the fear of it, the fear of death. So we're going to fight over that fucking apple. The same as any fucking other animal would, man.
Yeah. I can dig it, man. I hope the three of you that are still listening have enjoyed our break into the new season. Again, we were going to do Donald Trump, but this seemed more pressing, and I did more research already than I had done on Trump. That's not to say I haven't been learning a lot about Donald Trump. And boy, let me tell you, I've learned a lot about Donald Trump. And at the same time, I've learned nothing new. Like everything I've learned, I'm like, yeah, that tracks. That figures. Yeah, that sounds about right.
So yeah, we
That's going
definitely
to
want to be digging deep into the Don Father.
Oh, God, Emperor of the United States, DJ Trump,
The Messiah of the new millennium.
Yeah, if Jesus is the Messiah of Israel, then Donald Trump is the Messiah of America. That is not actually my quote. That is from Pastor Shane Vaughn. And if you want to have some fun before we get digging into Donald Trump, look him up. Watch some of his videos. They're entertaining.
You know, that leads more credit to the Mormons thinking that the fucking Garden of Eden was down here in fucking, what was it, Arkansas, Missouri, some one of these fucking southern states.
Yep. It was Missouri, which they're banned from, Well, one day we're going to do full-on Mormonism. I mean, we kind of already did, but that was like an episode of
South Park, man.
Yeah.
Or Skeeter's Bar Talk.
Yeah, Skeeter's Bar Talk. But yeah, so we'll have to do Mormonism full-on one day. But in the meantime, I guess we'll sign off. Try not to apartheid your neighbors. If you have a Palestinian friend, check on them, make sure they're all right. If you have an Israeli friend, they're probably fine. Their death toll hasn't gone up since, October 7th. So,
but still check on them. I mean, it's the neighborly thing to do.
Yeah, it's the decent thing to do among human beings, to care for one another. It's the best we can do. So
and I don't care what side of the fence you're on this. Remember, the other side has a point of view that's just as valid.
Well, I don't know. Colonialism's never valid. It just happens.
Unless you're looking at it from the perspective of a colonist. And like I said, man, Israel is there. We can't say that it's not. It exists. We are there. There is 2 states there. We can't go back and say it didn't happen.
No. That's where we are. And, I mean, like I said, there's nothing really we can do in the meantime.
So Israel has its point of view, and people that support Israel's existence have a point of view. It is just as valid as the Palestinians' point of view, saying that Israel shouldn't be there. It was forced upon them. They both have valid points of view. It's just a matter of perspective, folks.
Yeah. I mean, one of them is currently doing a genocide, and it's quite likely that if the other was in power, there would still be a genocide going on. So, and on that note, yeah, folks, get ready for Donald Trump soon, and I guess fuck around and find out.